You're listening to Bring Me the Axe. I'm Brian White, and I'm one half of this morbid equation, and I'm joined by my co-host and brother, Dave White. Hey, Dave, how you doing over there?
Oh, thank you for asking. I'm okay. I just finished watching the first season of the miniseries.
Oh, yeah.
The original one,
Yeah.
1983. I told you when I was watching it last night, it's a lot less fun when you're seeing a lot of parallels between the present and the 1983 miniseries about aliens.
Yeah, about lizard people who eat rats.
Lizard people and people.
And
they eat people as well.
Yeah.
Great miniseries, but a little depressing when they're just like, this is how the fascists take over. And I'm like, God damn it, it's the same every single time, isn't it? You'd think we'd recognize it when we saw it coming.
I know. The thing is that the Earth people, they mount a violent resistance against the visitors, and that's it's just not how things end up getting resolved in the real world.
Yeah,
but it's a nice little fantasy.
It's a violent and extraordinarily white resistance. Weird.
It is the whitest represention of Los Angeles,
In Los Angeles, yeah. That's what I've been doing is watching that show.
Yeah, I've been learning to play guitar. Yeah. I've had these instruments for like years, and I've never really taken them seriously. And I'm pretty good at bass, but I have a guitar, and I've always wanted to get better at it, and I'm finally getting better at it.
You know what you ought to learn how to play? Barracuda.
You know what I learned how to play? Fucking Dream Warriors.
Okay, well, it's not Barracuda, but it's up there. It's good.
Well, maybe I'll have to learn Barracuda next.
I mean, it's the beginning.
Yeah. Jug, jigga, jug, jigga, jug.
Yeah, jigga, jaw, jaw. And then you get up way up high on the tiny strings.
Right. I know all about arpeggios and tremolos.
Yeah.
So we practically grew up in neighborhood video stores, and the steady diet of utter garbage that those shops provided us with continues unabated to this day. There's no one else I enjoy chopping it up with more about trashy movies than Dave. Before we get into it, here's a little housekeeping. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Instagram at Bring Me the Axe Pod. Dave's over there at That Queerwolf. Mm-hmm. I urge you to follow us. You know, you keep up on all the things. There's this funny shit in the middle.
Yeah, it's mostly art. I put a lot of art up there. There's
that?
a lot of gay shit too, you know?
Yeah. And me and them Simpsons memes.
Yep.
Yeah. And if you don't know, we got another show called 99 Cent Rental where we cover all manner of video store madness on the weeks when Bring Me the Axes off. If this episode's a little too highfalutin for you, you can fall back on that because our latest episode is American Ninja.
Yeah, see, I bring us up, raise the bar, and you just lower it right about as low as it can go.
And then after that, next week, we're going to look at Highlander. Which is fucking fantastic. Queen's soundtrack, Russell Mulcahy directing. Goddamn.
It's a real roller coaster, isn't it?
It really is. Highs and lows. We contain a multitude.
Right.
You can also contact us directly at bringmetheaxepod@gmail.com with any questions, comments, or suggestions. Do let us know if there's a movie that you love and would like to hear us give it the business. And if you would like to support us on Patreon, you can look us up over there at patreon.com/bringmetheaxepod. There's a couple of tiers you can join there. Subscribers at the $5 a month tier can look forward to our bi-weekly X-Files rewatch pod. Also 90s history pod as it happens. Do you think I'm spooky? We also have our monthly Bring Me the Axe Millennium Edition, which is a bonus episode in which we explore modern horror movie. Our latest episode out is looking at the very Australian Lake Mungo number 5.
Crikey.
Yep. And there's also my bi-weekly DJ show, Radio Free Haddonfield, on the weeks when Do You Think I'm Spooky is off. You can expect a surprising mixtape of everything from rock to disco to punk over there. All Patreon subscribers, even the free tier, get access to our Discord server. Paying members get access to additional channels, voice and video chat, and the watch parties option. Where we all kind of get together on a Friday night and watch a horror movie.
Yeah, you keep doing that? You doing that still?
I am. I'm getting back in the groove of things. Things have been a little busy lately, but we're heading into the summer and things are going to kind of slow down. So once again, patreon.com/bringmetheaxepod. And the invite for the Discord is in the show notes. Check the show notes. Also check the show notes for, merch.
Oh,
get yourself a t-shirt, get yourself a hoodie.
Yeah. Give us your money. Give to us your money.
And lastly, if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube now. Search us by name and subscribe if you prefer to consume your podcast that way. And you'll be doing us a favor by leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Costs you nothing.
And if you don't know what to say, just tell me about your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode.
Do that. Definitely do that. And if you listen on YouTube, tell us about your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode.
Yep. Mine is when they go back in the past and Bebop and Rocksteady are on vacation and they're dressed in their vacation clothes. That's one of my favorites.
It's not the one where Casey Jones gets a job.
No, that's a good one though.
And if you listen on YouTube, do us a favor, give the episode a like, leave a comment. We love hearing from you guys. Just want to get that all out of the way right at the top of the show. Because hey, Dave.
Yeah, awesome.
Who's this over here?
Well, we are not alone. We have a guest. He is a podcaster. He's the host of Punk Vacation, of Mondo Macabro, and They Live by Film is Chris Haskell.
Hey,
Hey, Chris.
Welcome.
How's it going?
Not bad. Not bad. So, are you ready to get arty?
Yeah.
I feel like we should have all of our Zoom windows in black and white just to suit the mood.
This is my favorite kind of arty though, because it's arty in the way that like Shinya Shikomoto is arty or something like that. You know, like it's he messes with.
It's full of mood and regret.
Yeah. I'm so happy y'all invited me on, and I just want to second what you said earlier. Please subscribe to your podcast if people aren't already, because it's great.
Oh,
I'm
a fan.
And subscribe to your shows. Your shows are fantastic, man. Punk Vacation is a rare treat, and I really enjoy that one.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, man, I'm excited to talk about this. You know, I got my start in so when I was in college, I worked at a Blockbuster Video, and it was all people with film majors. I was the only non-film major there, and so like Bergman was one of the first sort of directors that I knew by name. So this is fun. This is gonna be a fun episode to talk about it.
This one also came to me like at a weird time when I was in high school, and I was very much into the sort of the usual sort of milieu of our podcast subjects, just the garbage and low budget sleaze and trash. And I met a dude in my English class when I was a junior, and Dave, you know him as well. We also know his sister.
Who's his sister?
This is Trevor and Abby.
Oh God bless Abby.
Yeah. R.I.P. Abby.
Yeah,
the fucking best. But we were talking. It was one of those things where they pair you up and they sort of like put you together, and he and I just happened to get put together. He starts talking about movies, and I was like, oh shit, okay. So he's a movie guy, and then he starts talking about the movie Hardware, and I was like, oh shit, you and me got stuff in common. And then, but like the more and more like that we talk, the more he starts to sort of like veer into these sorts of territories. He's like, you ever see Seventh Seal? And I was like, I think so. And he's like, no, you'd know if you've seen Seventh Seal.
Because you would have been deeply moved.
Right. And then he was the one who really kind of got me to sort of break out of that and look at more like respectable fare. Like he's like, you gotta watch The Godard and Tarkovsky and all this. Yeah. And I tried all of them. And the only one that really kind of resonated with me was Bergman.
Nice.
So yeah. Because I've tried this stuff. Like I can't really get into any of the French New Wave stuff. I find Tarkovsky movies to be really fucking long and really hard to pay attention to. But these ones, they're concise and they fucking resonate with me in a really weird way. That said, I don't really make a habit out of watching them terribly often, because even at like 88 minutes, Hour of the Wolf is a chore. It is such a journey.
Wow. I chose this movie. I am a very big Bergman fan, and
yeah, you wanted a Bergman jag a little while ago,
I do,
which probably resulted in these movies getting added to the.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I've been working through the box set, the Criterion box set.
Oh yeah.
And
how many movies are in that box set?
30, I think.
Oh God.
Yeah, that sounds about right. There's like a few early films he did that are hard to find that aren't in there, but it's almost all of his full-length features.
It's the big ones, at least. I mean, you get both versions of like Fanny and Alexander. You get Things from Marriage. But this one, I was like, I'm going to find a way to sneak this into the schedule. And this is it's a bit of a stretch to call it a horror movie. But I
disagree. I think that this is very much a horror movie in the mold of maybe not the classic Universals, but definitely like more like Val Lewton.
Yeah.
It's extremely psychological. It's very personal. It's horror in a way that is very unexpected. Like like I trusted your pick on this one, but watching this, I was like, oh shit, this is haunting. So
yeah, there are moments where it catches you off guard and you're like, oh god, I don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have y'all seen Cries and Whispers by chance? The one that's all red?
Yep.
No.
So that's another one that people argue whether or not it's a horror movie. But for me, like I think he captures terror and like psychological breakdown very well.
Yeah, because he was constantly in one.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, this one to me is another great example of it. You know, a lot of this. I mean, I don't know. You know, like if you can jump around a bit, but like this was a lot of the ideas came from his nightmares for this. So like, you know, this is a very personal story for him, which is pretty fucked up.
Yeah, for sure.
I was going to go with, it was either going to be this or The Silence, which I think is the other one that is kind of horror-y, but this one I think is a little bit, it falls into the category a little easier, maybe.
Yeah, for sure, especially toward the end. But before we get too far afield, there's a trailer for this. Let me run the trailer.
Is it in Swedish?
I don't believe so.
Oh.
I think it's just the Criterion Collection trailer for it.
Okay.
The hour of the wolf is the hour between night and dawn. It is the hour when most people die, when sleep is deepest, when nightmares are most real. It is the hour when the sleepless are haunted by their deepest fear, when ghosts and demons are most powerful. The hour of the wolf is also the hour when most children are born. Ingmar Bergman's Hour of the Wolf. The hour in which reality becomes a mockery of madness and masks hide behind faces. The hour of all final moments. Sydow. Liv Ullman in Ingmar Bergman's Hour of the Wolf. A diary of truths and lies like truths.
Jesus Christ.
What's this movie called? Hour of the Wolf.
Varga Timin.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Oh man, that trailer really hits you too. Like it is, that soundtrack is crazy. And definitely representative of the larger movie. Like the music in this is sparse, and when it appears, it is jarring.
Yeah, there's all these movies he made when he went to Faroe Island. He has this, like, there's a famous trilogy he made there about religion and kind of falling from religion, like Winter Light, and then Silence, and then Through a Glass Darkly, and then he just there's several movies he made out there. I think that island did something to him, man, because there's just either that or he was already like this and he had a chance to be in his own thoughts on that island.
I would imagine that it's probably the latter, because from all the reading and all the research that I did on this guy, and Dave's got a lot of quotes that are gonna kind of get us into the head of Ingmar Bergman. He is a guy who seemed to be constantly going through something and was constantly just trapped in his own head, like just unable to sort of come to terms with like anything. So all of his movies, and he made like between like documentaries and some shorts and some shit for television, he made something like 60 plus movies, and they're all like deeply introspective movies, and they've all got a lot of him in them. And so like this was just like, I don't know, filmmaking was like therapy for him. Either that or it was like a terribly self-destructive act that he just couldn't get away from.
Yeah, it's like if Shirley Jackson was a filmmaker.
Yeah. Oh my Jesus fucking Christ. Yes.
I was gonna say, like, there's a reason he's Woody Allen's favorite director.
Oh, that's bad.
Well,
Yeah.
I will say, as I was reading some of these quotes, and we'll get into them in a little bit, but as I was reading them, they all made me think of that scene in, I think it's in Annie Hall, where Christopher Walken does the flames rising out of the pool of gasoline. And he's like, I tell you this because as an artist, I think you'll understand. And as he goes through the diatribe, he finishes, and Woody Allen just goes, and then leaves the room.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk some facts here. The year was 1968.
Ah, yes.
Year of our Lord. So here were some other art house movies that were released that year. 1968 was a big year for like art movies. Alejandro Jodorowsky's Fondo Elise came out that year. We also got John Waters' Eat Your Makeup that year.
Oh.
Let's see.
Yep.
George Kuchar's House of the White People.
Oh, God.
Yeah, was released in 1968, as was Andy Warhol's Flesh.
Okay.
Yep, and Blue Movie came out that year as well.
Now, Blue Movie is very important in the history of pornography.
And then rounding it out, Jean-Luc Godard's Sympathy for the Devil.
Okay.
Ostensibly an art film. It's mostly just about the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, and it's is that like they're all fighting with each other the whole time? Is that one?
I get the Rolling Stones movie confused because there's this one and then there's Cocksucker Blues, which I think it might be that one that you're thinking of.
I don't know the answer to that. There was a movie that came out the year before this called I Am Curious Yellow.
Oh, yeah.
And they were fighting a Supreme Court case, I think in 1968, to define pornography. I think it was in 68.
It's one of the cases, yes.
Yeah, one of the cases. Yeah. So anyways, there's a lot of interesting stuff coming from Sweden at that time as well.
Perverts. Bunch of perverts.
Bunch of socialist perverts.
Sexy perverts.
Yeah, but what I want to know is what is going on in Scandinavia? Because like when I think of
Well, it's cold and it's dark.
Because yeah, and the question got asked, and it really kind of got into my head when I was reading that book, Lords of Chaos, which is the book about the black metal scene in Norway in the early 90s, and it's like, you know, at the educate, like it's a very, they have a really broad social welfare system, and like everybody's really well taken care of. Their education system is like really, really good. So like, what the fuck is up with everybody that sort of creates these situations where like, and this is Norway, but I mean, it's not too far away from Sweden as well, that sort of like created this one moment in like 1990 where like everybody was like murdering one another and they were like burning down churches. Like, where the fuck did that darkness come from? And then you watch this movie and it's like, Jesus Christ, this is inside everybody over there. Or maybe it's just everybody, and I'm just sort of conflating it with Sweden as a whole.
My understanding is that, yes, all those socialist things are true, but one of the things there, at least in Sweden, that they were not very good at was like talking about sort of emotional topics. Like they were very sort of shut off and shut down in that way.
Oh, so everybody
which is why he makes movies
pushing
like
their shit down?
Yeah, it just was sort of like, my understanding is that like it just wasn't a thing you talked about with other people.
Okay. I mean, that's fairly common.
Yeah.
And also, like, I think so. My business partner was Norwegian a few years back, and I got to spend some time there. And I know, again, Norway is not Sweden, but I think there are some similarities culturally. You know, interestingly, although they do have a lot of these protections, and people are generally healthy and you know, can go to the doctor if they need to, and all those nice things, you're not supposed to stick out. So, like, it's actually there's a rule, and I was trying to remember the name. It's like something like Jotas law. It's not that. So forgive me, people from Norway. But there's some specific name that you grow up knowing that is like, you don't want to be a head taller than everybody. Like, you don't want to stand out. So like, if you like, entrepreneurship is tough there, or like, you know, and so there is a lot of anti-cultural movements that come out of that, because there's a lot of kids that are like, no, fuck you. Like, I'm not going to, like, I don't feel like a part of that society. And I mean, black metal is wild.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, it doesn't just end there. I mean, there's also like their death, like Swedish death metal is like very much a thing unto itself. I mean, it's really where that entire subgenre of metal eventually sort of grew into kind of death metal as a whole. Their sort of crust and grindcore music scenes are also they have a very particular type of that, like that sort of music that proliferated just in that area. And, down a little further down into like Denmark a little bit, but also, so like, yeah, it must be a little bit like Japan that way, where like, they have a very similar sort of cultural setup where it's like, don't stick out.
Yeah.
Like that. And then there's just a type of person who grows up in that situation who just can't fucking deal. Like I could never deal with a society that was like, you can't, like, don't make a scene. Don't, yes. Like, so I would
like, I'm going to do nothing but make a scene.
Just,
right.
It would be as messy and shitty and loud as possible.
Goddamn right.
Yeah. Let's talk about our cast and crew a little bit. We got a director that we've mentioned, Ingmar Bergman, who's one of the finest filmmakers of all time. Mm-hmm. If you've ever seen a spoof of an art film with abstract nonsense images, slow motion, black and white, dramatic instrumentation, they're usually spoofing his movies.
And it's unfair because if you see them in context, they are not nonsense.
They're not. By the time of his death in 2008, he directed over 60 films. In an interview with Playboy in the 60s, he said, "I don't want to make merely intellectual films. I want audiences to feel, to sense my films. This to me is much more important than their understanding them." Mission accomplished.
Well, one of his biggest things, especially at this time, because he's constantly going through an existential crisis. Like he struggles to fit in. He struggles when he stands out. And at this time, he is just coming off of Persona, which is a very similar movie. It is probably one of his biggest movies, a huge success. But the way he always thought about his movies was they weren't so much about stuff. It was like, I want people to know how I feel, because he was never very good at like expressing himself, but he was like, I can do this in film. And so his movies were always about like his internal conflicts. He's like, I want them to know, in the hope that if they understand, maybe someone will understand me and then they can help me resolve this. And it's like, that is such a weird, gross, masculine thing. Like, I'm just going to act out in very strange ways and hope that somebody picks up on what's happening. But like, that was kind of his thing, was like, I'm just going to put it all out there, hope that somebody recognizes my struggle, and then we'll either feel some sort of comfort or they will be drawn to me and we can figure this out together. It's like, dude, just get a fucking therapist. It's 1968, man. It is all the rage.
Yeah. At the same time, though, like, if that was his intention with these movies, like, I get that, because like I see some of myself in this character, and like some of my very personal struggles are sort of reflected in this movie. Like, I understand precisely what he's talking about in this, which is probably why I find this movie so fucking disturbing, because I have gone through it in a very sort of similar way of like derealization and kind of having your entire fucking life come down around you because you can't just get your shit together.
Yeah. And a lot of his movies that is what they are, is they're abstract in a way that they are, one person's understanding of themselves that is not so much an understanding, but they're really open to interpretation because of that, because you can project so much onto all this, because these are very simple stories. I mean, this particular one, it's like a handful of characters. Only 2 of them really matter. And you can project anything you want onto them because all you're seeing is them breaking down.
Yeah. There's also a tremendous sense of guilt.
Yes.
That he seems to like, because as we'll sort of find out about Bergman is he had a lot of wives. And he also had a lot of girlfriends. And he also had a lot of girlfriends when he had girlfriends. And so
he wasn't good at being a husband at all.
He really, really fucking sucked at that. And when he was called out on it, like, all the ladies would be like, what the fuck, dude? And he'd be like, hey, baby, I'm a complicated man.
Yeah. You gotta let Bergman sometimes, man. and what that means is be a really shitty father.
Right. Yeah, he's a messy dude.
Yeah, he was a Nazi supporter. I mean, come on,
that is something that I think that he eventually kind of comes around to realizing, and just sort of compounds the sort of already sort of deep sense of guilt that he kind of carries around just because of his sort of religious upbringing. And also at this point in his life, the point I was trying to get to and kind of lost the thread was the character of Alma in this is almost the character that he sort of like, it's in his own way. He like looks at the fucking wreckage of lives he's kind of left behind him and feels really fucking terrible, at least in this moment, because it didn't really change things much for him. But he does sort of recognize that there is a human cost to the way that he kind of carries out his life. But
that's the weird irony about it, though, is because he does feel a tremendous amount of guilt because he left his wife, that he dedicates this movie to his wife. But the woman playing the character of his wife in this movie is the woman he left his wife for. And then by the time they made the movie, he had left her too.
Yeah. Oh, it's unfucking real.
John Carpenter.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I know. As we're indicating, his movies are always deeply, deeply personal. This one in particular is biographical in a fucking terrible way. He often worked with the same people, making international stars out of Max von Sydow and Liv Ullman, and had a terrible habit of having affairs with his actresses.
I wish he had an affair with Max von Sydow.
There's no proof that he didn't.
That's true. Actually, we don't know that he didn't.
I've called him the emo final boss before.
Oh shit! When I kept reading like all of these sort of quips and quotes by him, I'm like, he is Werner Herzog times 1,000.
Yeah, because Herzog has a sense of humor, like a really good sense of humor. I don't think Ingmar Bergman had a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Apparently he does, like in real life. But it does not come out in his movies at all.
No.
There's some funny quotes about directors that he hates. I was trying to find some really quick. I'll see if I can pull some in.
Oh, shit. Perfect.
Yeah, he was outspoken. There's a couple, he pulled from the stage a lot. And in fact, there's a city in Sweden called Malmo where he has a theater.
Right. Because even though like he's best known for these kind of overwrought like films, like he was also a stage guy, and probably a stage guy first.
I think it was his first love, to be honest. Like, he references the magic flute in this, but then he actually made a movie on the magic flute later.
Yeah.
The only thing he wasn't good at was music. He wrote a bunch of novels, a couple of nonfiction books. God damn. He wrote his biographies.
A man of many talents.
Yeah, he's an artist, right? But messy personal life, and but he is self-aware, to your point. I mean, his movies, there's always this struggle, right? He's never celebrating the main character. Like, I don't think he's ever saying that the main character is doing it in the right way.
That's always hard to take, though, because on one hand, I appreciate like when someone realizes that they have problems or that they're a jerk in some way. But it's like, it's worse when you can say it and then be like, but what can you do? Like, there's a lot you can do. You can start by not being an asshole. Yeah. Bill Maher.
Turns out there's a lot you can do.
Yeah. So our cast, we got Max von Sydow, Ming the Merciless, Viggo the Carpathian, Brewmeister Smith. His sprawling, storied career on the screen began with...
You're going to skip Father Karras?
Oh, God, how could I?
Or is he here? No, he's the other one.
His storied career on the screen began with Ingmar Bergman as the disillusioned knight Antonius Block in The Seventh Seal, cementing him in Bergman's repertory company. Though not as regular as Bergman's muse, Liv Ullman, few actors are as closely tied to the legacy of Bergman as Max von Sydow, and man alive, this guy understood the assignment for this movie.
Yeah. I mean, he plays conflicted very well. He's asked to do it a lot.
Right.
In Bergman movies. There's another guy, and if you're going to go through them in more detail, I apologize, but I want to make sure we cover Erland Josephson.
Oh, I got a little note about him too, because he's
all right. Perfect.
Because this movie is primarily two people.
Yeah, true.
I would say that of the other sort of side players, the haunter, like the kind of the characters that haunt him, Erland Josephson's character is probably the one who is most pronounced. So I'll get to him, but not before I mention Liv Ullman, who is one of Europe's finest actresses and a woman who had a terribly unhealthy relationship with her director. Her best work is ostensibly the films she worked on with Bergman, fell into a romantic relationship with him in the early 60s, which lasted for 5 years and ends up a significant plot element of this very movie. They have a daughter together. She continues to act to this day, appearing on the occasional film, but mostly working on the Scandinavian stage. Yeah. And she's fantastic. Like
She's very good.
she's the one.
I mean,
who's
she's
like
good
the-
in like everything.
She's like the echoes of this guy, all this guy's bad decisions. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's the one who experiences the fallout, probably the worst.
And I think that's what I struggle with, particularly. And we will obviously, it's a big plot of the movie, but is that he recognizes, maybe not specifically her, but he recognizes, because one of the main themes of this is his relationship with women, but maybe more broadly, men's relationship with women. But he recognizes the strength of this woman and the strength of this character. And he writes her to be that way. And it's like, okay, dude, you can see that. And yet you're still treating her like shit all the time.
Right. Hey, you got to let Ingmar be Ingmar.
That's true.
I think, if there's like a comedy duo, you need the straight man or the straight player.
Yeah.
I think Liv Ullman kind of plays that role for him. Like she's I think you used the word reflection, if I remember. I think that's the perfect way. She sort of is, you see the impact of like his psychosis because she's so good at letting it affect her like in the right way.
Right. Because like in the movie, his character Johan is trapped in his own nightmare that is sort of manifesting in the world around him on this kind of remote island. But while he's constantly like stuck in this kind of, maybe it's a fantasy, maybe it's not, it has a direct effect on this woman who just like wants to love this guy. But like every time she gets close to him, he kind of lashes out in a really fucked up way that is caused directly by the stuff that is haunting him. So she's kind of like representative of the human cost of this guy's bad habits.
Yeah.
And she does, and she does it extremely well, like all the way to the end. It's a testament to her skill as an actor.
It sounds like a schmoxic masculinity.
You might say that. And rounding it out, we got Erland Josephson, who plays the manifestation of everything haunting Johan in the movie. This movie marks his return to film after a decade away. And from here, he resumes like a long and pretty prolific career working as one of Bergman's regulars, but also appearing in Andrei Tarkovsky's first non-Soviet pictures, and a number of Polizioteschi by our man Damiano Damiani.
Yeah, I've been on a real Damiano jag lately myself.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Some might say the impetus for this entire podcast.
Yes, he was, because he also went slumming it once.
Right. With Tommy Lee Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the original title for this movie was The Cannibals, and it was intended for production in 1966 as like a much larger movie. That he ends up, apparently he had like pneumonia or something like this at the time, and sort of like reflecting on this, on the script, the original script for this, it was much too big. And what he eventually does is he makes Persona, which is like one of his best movies.
Yeah, Persona is a movie that it's very much like this. It's about two women, kind of, they're not trapped, but they're like, one of them is quite ill and stuck they're in a cabin together, and it's like her and her nurse. And it's a lot like this in that it becomes a question of who's telling the truth.
Yeah.
And then, where does one person end and another begin? It's a lot of that. So this is kind of just an extension of that movie. It feels like sometimes it's sort of like, this is all the stuff that didn't fit in Persona.
Okay.
Because Persona is about women. This is very much about a man.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. This film's DP, Bo Vibenius, went on to direct the notorious rape revenge
He's
movie.
the unit director.
Oh, he's okay.
Yeah, Sven Nyquist is the DP on this, and he's fucking incredible.
Jesus Christ. These shots, the photography in this movie is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
It's just the contrast, right? The black and white contrast.
That's exactly what it is. It's like,
and static shots. Like there's so many static shots that you're just sort of like, my God, that is a stunning picture.
Yeah. Most of my notes are like, Jesus Christ, this movie looks amazing.
Well, Sven Nyquist is super interesting because he made a bunch of movies with Bergman, but he also was like really successful in Hollywood. He ended up making, so after, I think Fanny and Alexander is sort of the one that pushes him into Hollywood, but he shot Sleepless in Seattle. He shot Chaplin, like in the 90s, huge in Hollywood. He also shot Star 80, that movie about what's her face, she was murdered there.
It's the one that's got Muriel Hemingway, right?
I think so. It's got, Jesus Christ, he's in, Eric Roberts, I think, is in it.
Ooh. Yeah.
It's not a very good movie.
Oh, Dorothy Stratton. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, Dorothy
That's
Stratton.
what it is. Yes.
Yeah. He was just like, he had a huge run in Hollywood and like shot some really fucking huge movies because the guy's very, very talented. His eye for everything is super good.
Yeah. Vibinius, his movie, he made Thriller, A Cruel Picture, and the somehow even nastier movie, a movie called Breaking Point.
I've never seen it.
Breaking Point. But yeah, Thriller can get dirty.
Yes, it can. And we talked about this a little bit when we did Night of the Living Dead. This movie was made in 1968. Curiously and very deliberately, this movie is filmed in black and white at a time when even like the cheapest low budget shit could be made in color.
I think he felt more comfortable with black and white. I think his themes are conveyed much easier that way. He's not that great with color, except for what was
Fanny and Alexander is a great looking movie.
It's great. Cries and Whispers is one that's like, that is a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
But otherwise it's mostly black and white.
But also I believe like in this movie in particular, like there is so much shadow and light and like stark high contrast, like sharpness between the two. Like, I mean, the darkness itself is kind of a character in the movie. So I don't think you could have gotten away with this movie in color. It's definitely, it's like a black and white movie. Very much on purpose.
I never had a coffee with Ingmar Bergman, but I imagine if you got talking about it, he would be a purist. Like,
oh sure,
I would imagine he could be like a black and white purist.
Oh yeah,
because he would be like, when I was a child and my father took me to the picture house.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, his father probably never took him to the picture house, and that might have been part of the problem.
See, no, the picture house was a den of iniquity. It's a very sinful place.
Mm-hmm.
No, I bet you his father talked to him once a year on Christmas and told him that he could be better.
And then he locked him in a closet.
Yeah. So let's see. You guys want to get into it? My notes. There's not a whole lot of production history to really be known about this movie. Most of, I think, the discussion is going to sort of emerge from the story itself as we go. So
I did find a consolidated list of directors he hated. Do you want me to do that?
Oh shit! Yeah.
It's pretty juicy. So, he's a grumpy guy. Right?
You don't say.
So, he famously hated Jean-Luc Godard.
Yep, good. On board.
He called his films affected, intellectual, self-obsessed, and without interest.
Oh, okay. Jesus Christ! Calm down there.
No, well, but also self-aware bear, right? Like, come on, man. So he also did not like Orson Welles, calling his movies empty and dead.
Great. Nice.
Like Orson Welles now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He didn't like Hitchcock. Although he acknowledged his technical skill, he felt he lacked true depth and originality and thought his films were affected. Yes. He thought his films were empty and lacked originality.
What?
I mean, I guess I could sort of see the argument. I don't know, though. It feels like he's just. I mean, maybe he's just
pissed because like Hitchcock was just a lot more commercial than he is.
Yeah, I mean, I who knows? The other big one is Fellini. He felt his films were too whimsical.
I will actually agree with that. I don't know about the whimsical part, but like I don't think they're that deep, and they're gigantic movies. Like they feel very early big Hollywood in a way that's like, this is dumb.
Well, I disagree. We can talk about him on a separate podcast. He's my number one of all time.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah. I don't take offense. We all like different things, but I feel like Fellini writes me somehow. Like his characters, I think he's under what's the word, rated as a writer.
Well, I'll give him another chance then. Because I've only seen the hits, so.
Yeah.
No, because I'll tell you, because for me, Fellini is a guy who, like, backing up just a step, creative
this
people.
Horror podcast is getting real highfalutin, isn't it?
I fucking warned everybody.
Yeah, somebody throw a pie.
Thank God we thank God we got fucking American Ninja to fall back on. For creative people spend a lot of time in their own head, right? And it creates this sort of you get this kind of internal landscape, this vision of how you would like the world to be. And it creates a kind of a standard that the world can never actually live up to. And it can be very, very disappointing and very disillusioning. And how you deal with that, how you express that and let that out is kind of, I think, is expressed in a very healthy way through Fellini, whose movies are just him with a fucking loudspeaker, like blasting every crazy ass idea he has out into film. And meanwhile, on the flip side of that, like the dark reflection of that, you got Ingmar Bergman, who just has no fucking idea how to sort of get that out of him in a way that I consider similarly healthy in the way that
sure he does. It's I hate myself. Somebody help.
But going back to that thing about like, you know, we push everything down. We don't talk about this. We let it out. In his case, it just everything, all this evil, bad shit just kind of ferments and explodes on screen. And then also just kind of gets a little on everybody around him when that happens. Yeah. So that's really sort of the difference. And I don't know, maybe he's got like a kind of a resentment of Federico Fellini and his ability to just sort of like let it ride.
He was also just kind of an asshole. Yeah. He's just a bitch though.
My defense of Fellini as not being too highfalutin is he gives us Donald Sutherland from a POV where all you see is Donald Sutherland fucking somebody with a crown of candles. And like, there's not a lot of people that give us that. and Fellini did.
He's the only guy who had the stones to give us Donald Sutherland. Fucking
we
somebody.
All wanted it.
I mean, I bet you could find other people who would have wanted to do that.
Oh, sure. I mean, geez.
But you can only do it once.
He got there first.
Everybody gets one.
He got there first. That's what it takes. It takes balls to do that. What did the press think of this movie?
Yeah. So what we've got here, because most of my notes are going to be about the interpretation of this movie, and I would like to save our interpretations of it for the very end. But a lot of my notes are all about that. So this movie did not do very well in Sweden when it came out. It's largely because it's a very dark movie. It has a very dark tone, and it just wasn't very well received. In the US, it came out around the same time here, and it did a little bit better. So I'm going to hit you first with the Boston Globe, my hometown paper of record. It is a compulsive masterpiece, a film to be avoided if it is entertainment you want, and one to be viewed by all means if you look on picture making as an art. Which I think is, this is an entertaining movie, but it's a darker movie. But so I'm okay with that. The New York Times, everyone else's paper of record.
Gray lady.
Yep, the old gray stag. It takes great power for an artist to win through to the edges of madness, suicide, memory, and guilt so continuously as Bergman, and come back with so much that seems familiar, out of an old dream or an old nightmare. Bergman works where people's nightmares converge. Hour of the Wolf is not one of Bergman's great films, but it is unthinkable for anyone seriously interested in movies not to see it. I'll tell you what, Renata Adler was really feeling herself with that review.
Yeah. That's a very flowery review, but also fucking on point.
Yeah, no, that's true. But not everybody liked it. Not everyone loved this one. But
these people are fools.
Here's the Baltimore Sun. As is true of all Bergman's works, the film is rich with imagery, is impeccably performed, and has the sort of dramatic intensity that holds one's attention throughout. But unlike his hero, Bergman refuses to share his experience with the audience. I would argue this whole thing is his experience. Indeed, the film may represent his own Hour of the Wolf, and, provocative though it undoubtedly is, I fear what it would portend. God, I love these fucking writers in the 60s. Portend. People don't use the word portend enough.
They are masturbating writing all of this. They like 100%.
Not everybody.
These reviews, man, in the 60s, we used to be a proper country.
That's right. Well, here's the last one. And this is Kevin Thomas, who I did not realize was still working. Like the guy must have been like 100 when he retired from the Los Angeles Times. Kevin Thomas. Long tortured by spiritual doubts, Bergman seems to be saying the loss of faith in the idea of man having been made in the image of God leaves us with a sense of incompleteness and a loss of identity. In seeking to find ourselves in others instead of Christ, we become devourers and the devoured. Now, let me share with you a little something that Bergman himself wrote about his feelings about Christ. This is from Ingmar Bergman. I have struggled all my life with a tormented and joyless relationship with God. Faith and lack of faith, punishment, grace and rejection, all were real to me. All were imperative. My prayers stank of anguish, entreaty, trust, loathing, and despair. God spoke. God said nothing.
Holy shit.
And then he goes on to say, you were born without purpose. You live without meaning. When you die, you are extinguished.
My God. Oh my God.
God does not necessarily dwell among our increasingly capricious atoms.
Oh my God. What the fuck?
So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, no, this is not a movie about being disconnected from Christ.
Oh,
I think he was just fine with that.
I do know that the version of Christianity that sort of landed and took hold in Scandinavia is a particularly bleak.
Yeah. The one thing we forgot to say is that his father was a preacher and a very like fire and brimstone old style, like Old Testament
They were
preacher.
Lutherans.
Yes. And so his father was a very severe man who put God before absolutely everything else and his children like dead fucking last. So his relationship to his father comes up in pretty much every movie he's ever made, except for this one, weirdly. And his relationship to God, which is kind of a proxy. His father is sort of a proxy for God and vice versa. Comes up in pretty much every movie he's ever made, especially.
Oh Jesus! if your father is a preacher and your lens through which you view God is your father in this case, oh man, this guy was just destined for brutal atheism. But yeah, there's a band from Finland called Mansion, who, you know, of course, Finland right up there in the same area. They were sort of a not really a metal band, but they're like a doom band who, instead of the usual sort of like Black Sabbath tropes of most doom metal bands, theirs is sourced from this very particular, like very weird, very severe version of Christianity that kind of took hold in that region at the same time. And so it's all like fire and brimstone, where all sinners, our bodies are decaying, like temples of sin. It's like, it's hardcore. It is a beautiful, beautiful way to sort of like build a doom metal band around. They're like one of the most original that I've seen in a while, but in the context of Ingmar Bergman, makes perfect fucking sense.
Yeah, it's all sinners in the hands of an angry God. It's real old style preaching.
Yeah, they're that entire sect was a little bit like the Shakers here, where they just like viewed sex no matter how you went about it in terms of procreation, even as a sinful, evil thing. And so they eventually just kind of vanished because they weren't procreating.
I mean, you got to appreciate the nihilism of that, though. We're all going down together.
That is a fucking commit. It's like something out of a Thomas Ligotti novel.
Mm-hmm. So another great thing I found. So the inspiration for this movie, as you said, comes from his own nightmares, and it comes from a lot of what he was feeling at the time. Because the main character is an artist. He's a painter, but he's an artist, which is like the title of artist becomes very important in this movie. And so a lot of people struggled to understand what this is about, and he never really said what it was about, because I think in his mind it was evident, maybe, question mark.
Yeah.
But what he said about, so really the most he has said about the inspiration was this really great quote that I found is, ghosts, devils, and demons, good, evil, or just annoying, they have blown in my face, pushed me, pricked me with pins, plucked at my jersey. They have spoken, hissed, or whispered, clear voices, not particularly comprehensible, but impossible to ignore. I read that, I was like, God damn it, man. Yeah, really know how to turn a phrase there, don't you? But so he is, like I said, he's coming off of Persona, which is a huge hit internationally for him. And he had already had a bunch of hits, but Persona was much bigger. And I don't really know why. I mean, it's a great movie, but it's like, so are a lot of the other stuff he made before that. But it resonated, particularly in the United States. And I think what he was really struggling with was being an artist, being successful, but like not knowing what to do about it. Like now everybody wants part of you. And he obviously was not a man who was very good at communicating. He was not very good at relationships. And that is going to be evident in this movie. But a lot of people have projected a lot of shit onto this movie. And there have been a lot of wild interpretations of it.
There's some class stuff in this.
Yeah.
That I definitely zeroed in on, particularly how like a professional artist makes a living, often basically through like patronage and stuff like that. So like rich people are essentially funding your craft and your ability to sort of continue as an artist, as a professional. But these are people who don't necessarily value the art in the same way that you do. And that
there's a great line in the movie that comes a little bit later on in the, like halfway through the movie, that speaks exactly to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I picked up on that immediately. I feel him on that shit.
Yeah. So some of the bigger things that we won't get into them right now, but some of the bigger things that I think we should just be aware of going into it is the big ones are men's relationships with women. The concept of masculinity in general and what it sort of means to be a man, and sexuality is a big one. And then just sort of the individual identity of the artist in relation to their art and in relation to their audience. I think those are probably the biggest kind of like themes, the umbrella themes that we will run into. Those are the big ones that people kind of key on, in analysis of the movie.
You mentioned nihilism earlier. I do think there's a kind of running theme through that as well, just everything falling apart and nothing mattering.
I feel like maybe, yeah, but in a way that is more a sign of defeat than anything else.
Yeah.
It also could be sort of the way that basically Bergman's particular outlook on everything is, there was definitely a personal conflict that he felt where he was trying to sort of like live this kind of like life where he just kind of like did whatever he wanted to do, but that it also had this kind of external manifestation in the fact that like his life was just constantly fucking coming apart because like he just could not maintain a relationship with a woman. He just sort of like did whatever he wanted, and then there would be like aftershocks of that, and so he'd be like, "Hey, what happened?" That's what I'm trying to say. Is like he couldn't quite square his actions with the consequences.
Well, and I think that goes back to him being like, "What if I just put all of my emotions out there on the fucking stage for everybody, and then someone can tell me what they mean?"
Yeah, it's like, hey man, it's a desperate cry for help, is what that is. Yeah.
Every single movie he ever made.
You want to talk about the movie now?
Well, I think we have no choice.
Okay. So we open on some title cards, which inform us that the painter Johann Borg disappeared without a trace from his home. Among the belongings he left behind was a diary, and this film is an account of the events outlined in that diary.
Based on a true story.
Right.
TLDR, based on a true story.
So now the credits roll over a commotion of some kind. Voices suggest they're moving furniture around a set, and then a voice, presumably Bergman,
is what it is.
Commands the camera to roll and announces action, which is a very neat thing. I like that.
Yeah, and I think that was probably what he's trying to convey, that it is a performance, it is a play you're about to see. Because otherwise I can't, like, there was actually a lot more that they had filmed. I don't know if there was actually footage of them, but it's the crew you can hear in the background.
Yeah.
And that's all you can hear. And it's a really interesting thing to sort of interject into your, fictional movie. But it does sort of indicate like, yes, you are about to see a performance, like listening to an orchestra kind of a tune up.
Yeah.
And they consistently break the fourth wall throughout the film at different times as well. So it's certainly a part of it. I think he wants that. Feels like he's really going for that separation too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, sorry, keep going. And you're going through it.
So we fade in on the cottage in the day. A woman emerges from the cottage, sits at a nearby table looking disturbed. And just like you said, breaking the fourth wall.
Severely Swedish, very Swedish.
It's all in the sweater. Yeah,
she is 80% sweater.
It's all cable. It's cable knit from head to toe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the way down.
Yep. So she looks at the camera, speaking of breaking the fourth wall, and sadly explains that she sticks around the house despite the disappearance of her husband out of convenience.
I will say, what is interesting is that yes, they are breaking the fourth wall, and sometimes they do it very obviously, and other times less obviously, but you're never quite sure, with one or two exceptions, whether she's talking to the audience or she's talking to somebody else.
Yes.
Because it seems initially like she's giving this over to someone.
You know,
she's
the
saying,
way
here
that
are
she
the
does
things
it
of his.
it is almost like watching an Errol Morse documentary, because she's talking to the camera straight on in the way that he does it. And so like at first, and then eventually it transforms, because she's going to do this a little later on towards the end of the movie. And at first it's like, is she talking to like a director? Because we just heard the director like setting up the shot and all this stuff. Or is she talking to us? And then towards the end, you're going to be so involved in this movie that it's like, oh, she's talking to me.
Yeah. Like, because now we are all a part, like, welcome to my breakdown.
Right.
Like that. And that's sort of the point, is like, we're going to draw you all in, and you will, by the end, you will be a part of this too.
So she recounts the events leading up to the disappearance to the camera as though it's a documentary. Johan was stressed out at the time, something about work not going well after years of decline. And then we cut to a boat arriving at shore.
Well, actually, she says something really interesting when in this sort of monologue that she's having. She says that they lived on this island 7 years, then, give or take, and they would sometimes leave. And she says, when times were tough, I'm going to paraphrase because it's Swedish and I don't speak Swedish, believe it or not. When times were tough, she would work at a store. And I think that is the first indication of something interesting about the gender dynamic, that he is this artist. He's this great artist, and we will eventually understand that he is a fairly well-known artist, very successful. Yeah. But in moments where he's not, she has to sort of step in and kind of support them and take this kind of like, not menial work. She works in a store, but like she takes this job in order to support them because he's not selling enough. And so it's like, this is a first indication that like Alma will always step up when called upon. When there is something that needs to be done, Alma will step up and do it, because Johan really can't. He can do one thing, and that's it. And when that one thing doesn't work out, she's either going to go fix it or they're going to be fucked. And so I think it's it feels like a throwaway line, but I don't think it is. I think it's the key to a lot of what happens next, because I think there's a lot of resentment between them that is based a lot in that thing, that kind of like, I will do this because you won't.
I interpret that a little differently. The way that it comes across to me is not resentment, but like he feels some guilt about that.
Oh, right. No, it's all internal. Like his shit is always him internalizing everything, but then projecting it back out in this terrible way.
Yeah. Johan stands at the bow guiding the boat in. They unload all of their belongings, items implying that they're moving their house to this remote island.
And we're given in this moment where we see them arriving on this island. And, it's an island in the, what do you call that part of the country? Part of the world?
Scandinavia.
Yeah. And it's a very hard landscape. Like we will see other parts of the island later that have trees and flowers and all this other stuff.
This is representative of that island Faro, where he went to live and
when they arrive, it's all stone. It's hard and dark, and it's not very welcoming.
No. Also long takes.
Yes, I love it. This whole fucking movie is like just one static shot after another.
There is a crazy, like, keening, whining soundtrack playing over this as they arrive too.
It's the wheelbarrow. There's the wheel.
Oh, that's what it is. Yeah, because then they stop and it's just silent.
And so that was intentional. What he wanted was no soundtrack, like no musical score for the first half of the movie. And then once it starts to kind of pick up its pace, that's when we get that score, the sort of like big bombastic score. But we get no music for the first half of this movie. And all you get in the background is these really kind of tedious and intrusive noises.
Yeah.
The first one we hear is the wheelbarrow, the squeaking of the wheelbarrow. It is very, very awful.
So they kiss when they arrive at the cottage and move in. Johan has his wife, Alma, playfully pose in the sunlight, proceeds to draw her. Later, she does laundry as he arrives back from his painting sesh. This time, he's moody and distant.
Yeah, he's like, hey, Alma, got a couple questions for you. You ever have dreams about these really fucked up things?
I got to tell you, We've talked about my parasomnias a bit on this show. I also have really, really vivid dreams that can sometimes be really fucked up. So like I feel this guy's terror at dreaming. Apparently Bergman was an insomniac. And so
yes,
like
I know it well.
Yeah. And so like, yeah, this definitely plays. When he slept, he probably didn't welcome it. You know, the insomnia may have been a part, like sort of like a side effect of like basically not wanting to go to sleep because of what you see when you do. By night, she mends clothes while he paces around anxiously, pouring himself a drink. He shows her his latest sketches of people that he sees in dreams and vision, strange people with frightening qualities, an old woman who keeps threatening to take her hat off.
Actually, no, he starts somewhere else.
He says, I think this one's a homosexual.
He says the first one is a homosexual, but he's not, he describes him as harmless.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting that that's where he starts and that this person is harmless, because what he then goes into is a list of people who are increasingly terrifying.
Yeah, there's
an old. My favorite is one.
That is very interesting because eventually all of these people are going to show up in the movie.
Oh no, you're going to get one. Trust me.
My favorite is the old woman who keeps saying she's going to take her hat off, but when she does, she takes her face off.
Yes, and that was the real one. That was the one that actually came from his dreams, was a woman who, when she took her hat off, she also took her whole face off. And I was like, you know what? That's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
I agree.
Yep. There's a man who is like a bird, or maybe it's just that he has a beak for a face. Alma is not feeling it.
And she's like, look, man, I gotta darn these fucking socks. Are you just gonna stand behind me pacing? Because you're freaking me out.
And the shot is tight and claustrophobic as hell because it's also in the dark. And most of the cottage is just clothed in darkness.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is another example, too, of Alma doing something productive for both of them while he just stands behind her losing his goddamn mind.
Right.
I do think, even though I do think he respects her, or respects the women in his life in a weird way, because he writes her as a very grounded and like strong character.
He does. I think maybe I misrepresented him a little bit earlier, and because I don't think it's a resentment. I think a lot of it is misplaced anger and guilt.
Yeah.
Because he turns everything kind of back on himself, like always. Like this woman was the one who was getting shit done, and I walked out on her, you know. And so here's this movie that is like a manifestation of my guilt about this shit I put this lady through.
And I'm gonna say something real brave right now. Good, man. Good. She's doing all this shit, and you're just having a fucking nervous breakdown and acting like she's the asshole.
So then he counts down a minute, remarking how long it takes, and man, it does. It takes a while. It is excruciating to watch him count this minute down.
Oh wait, there's another person. He says I don't know if he says it he draws a picture of them. It might just be something he references in his dream. He calls him the schoolmaster with the pointing stick in his pants.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I don't know how we are to interpret that. I think one of the ways is that you could, again, kind of lump that in with his fears of homosexuality, but also of being a child in a situation where someone is sort of dominating you. Because that is another thing that will keep coming up. Because again, as I said earlier, his father was a kind of dominating force in his life where he was a very cold and hard man.
Yeah. But
that one doesn't really come back. I just thought it's sort of a weird, that is a throwaway line.
Well, the schoolmaster is in the movie.
Really?
Yeah. We'll get there.
Okay.
So now, in the silence, he brings up a thought that, or rather Alma brings up a thought that she had about couples who spend so much time together that they begin to resemble one another. She hopes that this happens to them.
Yeah, in gay couples, that's called twinning. It's real creepy. Speaking of gay, I do have a note that says, Johan, if you're afraid of turning gay, maybe you should reconsider that mesh tank top you're wearing.
It's like he's going to the club.
Yeah, on Faroe Island.
Yeah. So yeah, this is kind of a cute moment that is cut short when she realizes that Johan has fallen asleep at the table, so she takes him to bed.
Yeah, did you fall asleep or did you pass out?
In the morning, we cut to basically the same space, but now it's brightly lit and it's like a big open space. It doesn't feel nearly as claustrophobic and scary as it did the night before. She takes the bedclothes out to be washed and is met in the yard by a woman in a white dress and a white hat who tells her that she's 216 years old. Wait, no, she's 76.
Fucking liar.
Wait, but there is something you said I don't know if you framed it this way on purpose, but it's important because the nighttime is always claustrophobic in this, right?
Yes.
And that's the cause of like all the problems. And the daytime is great. Like it's wonderful for the most part.
Yeah, because like right when the movie not when the movie opens really, but when they finally arrive at their place and they're settling in and they have that moment where he draws her, like it's brightly lit. It's a very pretty shot. They're both like in good moods and stuff like that. Like this is a couple that is in love. And then immediately we cut to the nighttime when he comes home and is just haunted.
Yeah.
And I will say, listener, if you have not seen this movie, please see this movie. It is very, very good. Also watch his other movies. They're also very, very good. But it's it is conveyed in the movie. It gets a little lost maybe, but like he is essentially afraid of the night. And that is what she says at the very beginning in her monologue with maybe us or maybe with someone else, is that she says that he is she's basically describing someone who is decompensating in a lot of ways. He is afraid of the night. He is afraid of going to sleep. He's afraid of nightmares. He's afraid of the dark. He is someone who that's why he's fine in the day. But when the night comes is when these people come. And at first they are just in his dreams. And that's the thing that I think gets a little muddy in the movie, is that the people who we will meet are the people from his dreams. And it gets a little muddy, maybe because of, I don't know if it's a language thing, or maybe just not a great writing moment, but we don't really know whether she can see them or not. Because
until there is a moment where she's definitely seeing him.
Why I have some problems with this idea that we will keep coming back to is whether or not she can actually see them, because it's very clear at certain points that she can. Yeah, maybe mostly, but
or at least is not perceiving them the same way that he does.
Right, but there is this fear that because when night comes and you are supposed to sleep, these are the people that he sees in his dreams, and eventually they start showing up in his waking life, which is why in the early parts of the daytime, he's fine and everything's fine. But when night comes, it gets very stressful. And then eventually these people just start showing up during the day too.
Yeah. So she's about to leave when she tells Alma that Johann has drawings in his satchel under the bed. He wants to destroy them, but she shouldn't let them. And then she splits.
And she's not like, hey, lady, who I don't know and have never seen. Why do you know what's under my bed? You sneaky bitch.
Right. So Alma goes inside and looks under the bed, finding the satchel, which contains Johann's diary.
What I wonder in this moment too is she running to see if this lady does indeed know this to be true, or is she running because she wants to read the diary? Because she rushes right back in.
Good question. It was at this moment that it started to sort of dawn on me that like, I don't know if David Lynch has ever said anything about Bergman.
Oh, super Lynchian.
His movie, like this moment reminds me of the "I'm in your house right now" scene from not Mulholland Drive, the one before that,
Lost Highway. No, is it Lost Highway?
Lost Highway. It's the one where Robert Blake is the sort of the mystery man with the camera.
That's the one we walked out of.
Really?
Yes, you and I walked out of this movie.
I remember watching the whole thing.
Nope, all three. It was you, me, and Denise, and we all walked out of it like halfway through.
Oh, shit. All right.
And so did a bunch of other people. It's still a movie I don't very much like. It's like one of his movies that I'm like, Jesus Christ,
now that you mentioned it, I am remembering this, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, yeah, Lynch loves Bergman, though. Yeah. I mean, that's like,
it's so obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this movie in particular has a lot of touches, mostly because Lynch also does a lot of that. Am I dreaming or is this real stuff?
And I think if you watch The Silence, which I don't know if The Silence comes, I think it comes after this.
No, I think it's before, because I can double check this, but I think it's before, because that was part of that trilogy on Faroe Island. Mm-hmm. And I think this came after that. I'll fact check really quick.
And The Silence is it's not quite like this, but it does have this very dreamlike vibe where they're sort of, it's a little bit like Daughters of Darkness, where like they find themselves almost trapped in this weird hotel. where things are not quite what they seem and everything feels a little bit off. And that also has a very Lynchian, but it's not quite as existential.
Have y'all seen Virgin Spring by chance?
Oh yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Okay. So that came before he got into like, it's almost like I almost view this part of his life or career as like the Virgin Spring was him making a movie.
Yep.
And then he started making like personal stories, because a lot of the other stuff after that is just, it just feels so highly personal.
Oh yeah, because the Virgin Spring
though,
is definitely void of all of the sort of signature characteristics. Like
I don't think it is. I think it's a personal movie of a very different kind. I think it is. Virgin Spring is one of the movies, maybe a little bit like, is it Winter Light? I think is another one they're about his father. Virgin Spring is very much about like, look at your religion. Your religion says you're supposed to be better than this, and look at what you're doing now.
Oh shit! Okay.
Like everyone is capable. Like that's my takeaway of Virgin Spring is it's really this kind of condemnation of like you're all you claim to be so much better and so morally superior, and look what you've done.
So thematically, I totally agree with you. I guess what I meant was a little bit more just in like the way he constructs the story. Like I think this movie, he kind of like he doesn't really put together like a story. This is more about, you know, like watching this breakdown of his mental state, but it's not
vomiting onto the page is essentially what he's doing.
So now Alma reads about a time when Johann was painting and he's approached by a stranger who introduces himself as the owner of the island, the Baron von Merkens. And he and his wife are admirers of Johann. And he doesn't say much more than that, and then he leaves.
This dude looks so much like Danny Houston. Like I could not stop picturing Danny Houston, particularly in 30 Days of Night.
Okay. I could see
he
that.
looks
Yeah,
so
I can
much
see
like
that. Yeah.
And this guy, he's like he has a very interesting face, very severe looking kind of man, but like almost safe, but whatever it is, he hides something. This is that kind of mask idea. Like there's something behind him that's very, very creepy. And he will become increasingly more creepy throughout the
Yeah. Alma reads of a time when he was frustrated with his work and was approached by a woman in a sundress who exposes her breast, showing a bruise over it, implying that he did it, and describes an event, and it seems like that he's familiar with. She sits real close to him and reads a letter to him, which says, "You can't see us, but we can see you. The end is near." Then he kisses her, which she responds to positively. And then he unzips her dress and helps her out of it.
God, if I had $1 every time. This is that moment too where we start to realize what is memory, what is reality, and what is fantasy. We will never know, because this is essentially something that feels like a memory, but it also starts to feel like things are slipping. The lines between everything is slipping.
Yeah. Yeah. On his way home, Johann is followed by a man in a beret. And when he catches up to him, he introduces himself as Heerbrand, the school counselor.
Also the homosexual.
Okay.
You can tell by the way he's furiously pursuing.
Oh, he is running up on him. Yeah.
Yeah, he is.
Johann walks quickly, trying to outpace him. And he talks about Johann's art, reflections of people's hearts, blah, blah, blah. And
then he smacks the poor homosexual in the face.
He turns and slaps him.
It's outrageous.
Yeah. The man lays down in some distress.
So I find this portrayal very interesting, because if you do view this through that lens of the fear of queerness, the fear of homosexuality, what he's seeing after, I mean, first of all, you slapped a man in the face. You're not exactly the pinnacle of masculinity, but also that when he falls on the ground, the way that he responds to being slapped is this sort of almost sniveling, weak way. Like he's kind of whimpering. He's like just kind of, I don't know, like a dead bug on the ground. It's a very like, this is not the way a man responds to being assaulted. I will also say, if ever your nose is bleeding, do not tilt your head back. It's just going to roll down your throat and choke you. This homosexual clearly does not know that. But this one does.
Yeah. That's it. First aid tips.
Uh-huh.
When he arrives home, Alma hides the diary quickly and serves him soup and wine. Then she runs down.
And he pours 2 glasses.
Oh, yeah.
2 glasses of wine for himself. Girl, calm down. He was just hitting on you. It's fine. It's not a big deal. The lady doth protest too much.
She runs down her accounting for Johann, who is barely paying attention. She's very proud of this.
And she should be. Look, she's at home. She's doing the books. She's doing the bookkeeping. Meanwhile, Johann's in the front yard slapping gays. Who's being productive?
They both have their own form of a productive day.
I guess so.
But no, I mean, she's bored too, right? I mean, that's not really the main point here, but like, there's not a lot going on in her life. Like, she's tending to him. That's kind of her whole life.
Yeah. Well, she's also looking for appreciation for something that she does, because what she is really just saying, look, I have done this thing and I've done it very well. I am being responsible. Please acknowledge my contribution. And he's just kind of like, nah. It's like, yeah, man, without her, you'd be fucking broke. Some lazy weirdo slapping a gay guy in the yard. Like,
Yeah. So now they go to the Baron's place for a garden party and they meet the others. And among them is the school counselor. They have a very noisy meal with everyone, trying to talk to them at once.
They're all ghoulish. They're very ghoulish. So we get
this is the class stuff that I was talking about, because these people are nobility, and they've got a way about them that is fucking scary.
And so one of the reasons I think this gets lumped into the horror category is that it's they're referred to as vampires. Sometimes they're referred to as sort of like werewolfian people in some way. To me, throughout this entire movie, they're just very, very ghoulish people. Mm-hmm. Like they do not feel dead or alive, but they do feel very malevolent all the time.
Yeah,
we've been.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I think there's something important about this scene too, because if you were, I mean, I know we don't have timestamps, but it's roughly 30 minutes in ish.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Something, and like, it's the first time in the movie where I think there's something visually very compelling and interesting that going on, and like, it's a different tone, and like the movie changes from here on out.
It's also the first time that we get a sense of what else is happening on this island, because up to this point, it's almost as though they've been deliberately portrayed in a way that makes them seem like they are isolated.
And that's very much like Persona, in which they are very isolated. Right, it was shot in, I think it's probably shot in the same place, but like, you get this feeling like, oh, it's just them. But I think why I find that interesting is that you do sort of get the feeling that it's a little bit like Don't Look Now, where here is this couple that is a little bit on the ropes, kind of. And so they go to this isolated place to be alone or to kind of rekindle something. But what they ultimately end up finding is people constantly trying to pull them apart or to get in on their time together. Because initially we just see them together, but from here on out, there are just people popping up in their fucking conversations without warning. And like, literally sometimes just like walking into the scene.
Yeah. Amid the chaos, the Baron tells a story about how he once bought a painting from an artist and hung it in the house upside down. And then he invited the painter over for dinner, and everyone had a laugh at the joke.
Ha ha! That's not a good joke. It's a terrible joke. Yeah, I know. Zing!
See what I've done with your beautiful piece of art, you fucking sucker.
And I tricked you and brought you here to show you, fools. What I think is like super interesting. So this is where we see Sven Nykvist's like brilliant work. What he's doing is, when we get to the house, each of these people rushes up to introduce themselves, and they invade their space. And it's so I can't say for certain, but I think it's all handheld. What he's doing
could be,
and because it feels a little wobbly, doesn't feel like it's on a track or anything. But they're all invading their spaces, like they're just constantly getting right up on them. And then at the dinner scene, he actually had to sit down at the table with them in order to get each of these perspectives, because the room is so small, and he would just like, I can't track around the room. And so he would just sit and move between the chairs, essentially, like he is one of the guests. So we are seeing, again, it's that perspective thing where it is though we are the guest at the table with them.
Yeah. And this joke comes on the heels of the Baron explaining that he sometimes uses humiliation as a replacement for aggression in the ways that he deals with his position in the barony.
And I'm sorry, this was the other theme that I forgot to mention, is the theme of humiliation.
Yeah.
Because that is another big thing that he seems to struggle with quite a lot. And that is, I think, one of the big things that these guests represent is buying a person in order to sort of humiliate them.
Right. So everybody, and meanwhile, they're having this thing that everybody around them is having these like really fucked up conversations. It's really strange. It's almost like one of those, like a movie from an old dark house kind of movie.
Mm-hmm. Rocky Horror was the one that made me think of.
Yeah.
Like the people, the guests at the party at Rocky Horror, and when they show up at Rocky Horror, and it's just like all these fucking weirdos having weirdo conversations. Like they're either overly sexual conversations, like sexually honest conversations, or they're bizarrely vulnerable.
Yeah.
In an uncomfortable kind of way. Like there's the older man who's just constantly like saying really sad shit about like things he's done or sad and how uncomfortable he feels. And there's the older woman who's just like constantly like basically taking her tits out at the table.
Yeah, it's nuts.
But this is like there's a lot of things in this movie that are not super common in his other films. Like we don't. Yeah.
Well, he just like, I think you're right. The sexuality of it is very uncommon.
Even nudity. Like, I mean, it's in a little bit here and there, but it's always presented very naturally. But here it's like sexual nudity.
Right.
Like, but also the Rocky Horror Picture or Old Dark House style characters, like he doesn't do that a lot. Like this is something that's very experimental for him, I feel like, and very, very different. I think he really was like this. I think a lot of the reasons it wasn't successful when it came out is because they were trying to frame this up as a Bergman movie, and this is far away from Wild Strawberries.
Yeah, well, it does feel in a lot of ways. It has that feeling of like, why can't we talk about these things? Like, I am confused. I am sad. I am scared. Like, why can't I say these things out loud? I want to be able to resolve these feelings. Why am I not allowed to do this? And why, when I do this, does it feel scary? Why is this a fearful thing? And that, I think, is what a lot of this is. It's him really regurgitating. Like, I don't know what to do with all of this. Someone please recognize
that.
This.
That's kind of interesting point, because my thoughts on this scene are very similar. These are things that he's saying that he kind of wishes he could say, but he puts them in the mouths of characters who are ostensibly the villains of the movie.
Well, and they also mock him for these feelings, but in a way that is like, we are saying these things assuming that you feel them, and we are now sort of mocking you for feeling them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this idea of because they will constantly call him the artist. What does the artist think? And it starts to take on this tone of like, oh, you're an artist. You process these things. You think higher thoughts. And he's like, no, I don't. I need help. Someone help me. And they're just sort of like, oh, but you're the artist.
Right.
And it has this very like mocking tone to it. It's a very interesting thing. And yeah, I think you're right. Like that was probably not acceptable in I mean, it's not acceptable now, but like it probably in 1967, 68 in Sweden, it was probably just like, no, you don't say that. You don't do that. It's sort of like if you watched a British movie and, you know, like they would be like, no, we don't talk about things like that. Like this does feel, of all his movies, this one feels British to me in a lot of ways. It feels very much like The Haunting.
Okay.
In this way of like, here are proper people, and one among them is just melting down and is like flailing and asking for help in not a great way, but in a way, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's a lot of that, you know, it's him just saying like, why I need someone to recognize that I'm not the only one who feels this way. And when he sort of looks around him, he just sees people making fun of him, or he thinks he sees people making fun of him. I think that's probably the better point.
That's probably, yeah. So now the Baroness mentions to Johann that they have children, and one of them is very well known to him, a woman named Veronica. John is visibly uncomfortable at the mention of her.
Ruh-roh.
Right.
You didn't have a weird sexual affair with her, did you?
So they all retire to the library, where the Baron presents an elaborate puppet show to everybody.
I want to just put this out. We don't have enough puppet theater these days.
Puppetry is a lost art, man.
Look, you want to make America great again? Puppets.
Right.
I'm just puppets.
The thing that is very very interesting and also very David Lynch, like he must have pulled something from this, is we see the Baron goes behind the sort of like puppet stage. He lifts the curtain and then he puts a puppet down, and it looks like it's a real person, just like in miniature. And then it starts to move like a human being. And then we cut away and we don't see the fucking puppet show. We just see everybody reacting to it.
Look, they had like $8 for this movie. You're not getting the whole fucking puppet show.
If they were trying to spook me, that's a spooky tactic right there. Because it's like, wait a second, what the fuck is going on here?
We skipped over at that dinner theater. Like all these people are having this, these weird conversations and sort of making these intense comments. And then they cut to the Danny Houston looking guy. And he's just fucking staring at them.
Yeah.
In the most unnerving way. Like that to me is, there are a couple really unsettling moments in this movie. That's one of them where he just has this kind of blank look on his face. Like we are going to consume you.
Yeah.
And that is all. Like yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, puppet shows. I'm more into them.
So everybody watches. They're captivated except for Johann, who keeps his eyes closed. The Baron then goes on some tangent explaining his understanding of Mozart's The Magic Flute. The second time that this play is mentioned in the movie, the first being one of Johann's visions, the Birdman.
And he never really explains this. Bergman was like obsessed with the Magic Flute. Like I think I've seen like a PBS performance of it, probably in middle school, maybe high school. I don't remember anything about it.
Me either.
But I think one of the reasons why is that music was the thing that eluded him.
Okay.
Because he talks a lot about, if you ever read his autobiography, he talks a lot, or biographies, I guess, talks a lot about like how he could never get music. It just couldn't ever do it, but he loved it so much. And like, he was never very good at incorporating it in his movies at all. Just talk to Walter Hill about that. And so like that, I think like his obsession with this is like, this is the thing that I am chasing. I want to be the thing that I really like. We assume that like everybody is, when we see people like Bergman or, big musicians or whatever, like they are doing the thing that they want to do, that they love most of all. And it's like, maybe not. Maybe they really love something else, but they can't do that. So they're just turn out to be really good at something else. To which I say, fuck you.
I don't know. That kind of describes me a little bit.
Yeah, I know you're a terrible musician, but you're a great painter. Right. You're a better than average dancer.
I don't know about that. But Johann is called on to back up the Baron on this idea, but he explains his status as an artist as something that makes him a bit of a freak in the human world, and everybody is just eating it up, and they throw themselves at Johann.
And then they throw themselves at him in a way that is mocking. In a way that, like, to me feels very like, because I think what he's doing in that moment is he's expressing self-doubt and vulnerability and frustration, and they just sort of throw it back in his face a little bit.
See, this is that class shit that I was talking about up top, is like these people, because I think the way that it comes across to me is they are very earnestly sort of expressing these very shallow ideas about right. artistry to him. And to him, it seems very patronizing, but he also relies on these people in order to produce this art. And so he has just this very tangled relationship with something that he needs, but also fucking hates.
Right. And this is when they go for a walk too. And this is also where the gay is like exposing him about slapping him in the face. And it's like, girl, it was 3 days ago. You got to get over it. But also, this is when the older woman says something about how she bought, she's talking about a painting that she bought. She says, I bought a significant piece of your husband. She says to Alma. Oh, shit.
Yeah, that's right. Have you ever seen the documentary Exit Through the Gift Shop?
Yes.
Oh, hell yeah.
It's a lot like that. Like whenever they feature like the art collectors, they present them very much like that. Like there's a woman whose collection is very much through her home, and she's just sort of like showing off all of her stuff, and she seems to own it simply because it has value, monetary value to her. And at one point she comes up to this one piece, and then it's a small Keith Haring piece, and she's like, I have this Keith Haring piece. I don't really like Keith Haring, but this one's worth a lot of money. It's like, this is the sort of the way that he kind of portrays these sort of noble characters in this movie.
And that's not a new thing either. Like I am someone, I own a lot of art. I don't own a lot of expensive art, but I own a lot of art. And there are people, like if you just look at like when Mondo used to put out posters.
Oh, it used to drive me fucking nuts because like I bought when they first really kind of dropped on the scene, I bought that amazing Tyler Stout Thing poster that he did with all the glow in the dark ink and stuff like that. Cost me like $35, and then it blew up and turned into a thing, and I couldn't get anything for under $500 after that. Drove me crazy.
And when you would go to buy these things online, they sell out in minutes, like sometimes less than a minute.
Yeah.
Like you really have to be on it. And I am someone who I own a shitload of this stuff because I love it. I love poster art. I love poster artists. And you see, like, these are people who are just buying it to resell it or to just keep it somewhere. Now, I unfortunately have to keep it somewhere because I live in a very, very small apartment. But were I to own a large place, I would paper the walls with it. But yeah, it's very much like that. It's this idea of like, I will own a piece of this thing so somebody else can't.
Yeah.
On a tiny scale, in the whole Blu-ray community, it's the equivalent of going after something that has 1,000 copies and putting it up on eBay the day you get it. You know, it's kind of like, it's like, no, like there actually are probably 1,000 people that wanted this movie, and now you're asking them to pay double. Like, fuck you for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's literally the same thing. It's the same people probably that are just you know, they're out there. They're just like, I don't even own a DVD player. What do I want with this? I'm just going to turn around and sell it on fucking Mercari or whatever.
I feel very lucky whenever I get like one of the limited slipcase editions of like a Vinegar Syndrome disc.
Is it just because I send them to you when I'm done watching them? Because again, very small apartment.
But
I don't need brimstone and treacle. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a fun one to talk about, but that's a fucked up movie. I mean, I just couldn't believe they went there. That's all. But,
I can, but for cynical reasons. That's not what this podcast's about.
But I do think, like, is there a possibility that these are all just fragments of his psyche? Like that none of them are real?
I think in a very abstract Bergman sense, I think each of these pieces of these people are pieces of him. They are all pieces of his self-doubt. And I think that's what he makes a comment at the very end. Someone makes a comment, but he does. Johann does at the very end about the mirror being broken.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's really who these people are. They are the pieces of his personality that he cannot reconcile. You know, he's an artist, but he is also riddled with doubt. You know, he doesn't think he should be successful, and yet here are these people who want to buy him. And he can't form a relationship with women, and yet here are all these women trying to have sex with him. And so I do think that that's really what this is. And I mean, that's again kind of what Persona is. It's like, you know, my interpretation of Persona is that that's one person. That's what we're watching, is the separation of this one person in their mind. And I think that's what this is too, is like, that's why she says at the end is, why couldn't I see these people the way that he saw them? Right. And it was because they were never real. They were always inside his head. They're always his fear that he cannot express and he cannot resolve because he can't express them. He tries to kill them in this terrible way. And he literally tries to kill them. And when he can't do that, because that's the only way he can actually try to resolve these issues, is with this gross kind of masculinity, is to try to push them away. And when he can't push them away, he tries to kill them. And that doesn't really work either.
So back in the house, the Baroness shows them a painting of Veronica that they bought from Johann so long ago. And it turns out that Johann and Veronica were a couple for several years. And again, we don't see the painting, only their reactions to it. There is an implication here that buying an artist work is like owning a piece of the artist. On the way home, Alma confesses to Johann that she read his diary, and she worries that she's losing him to these these rich people on the island. She becomes quite emotional and tells him that she'll stick it out no matter what happens, but she's sure something terrible is about to happen to them. Again, Johann is distant. He says nothing.
What I think is interesting too about this moment is, you know, here is Johann, this person who's like falling apart. He doesn't want to go back to the mansion, the castle, or whatever the fuck it is. And Alma, meanwhile, is just like, I will do whatever I have to do. And it's that moment where she goes to work at the store because she has to support them. She will stick it out. She will stay here because, not just because she loves him, but because this is the responsible thing to do. And he, meanwhile, can't seem to do any of these things. He's very childlike in a weird way. And there's that moment again of like struggling with what does it mean to be a man? And he can't seem to quite be a man in this relationship. Every time something comes up that needs to be dealt with, Alma is the one who has to stand up and do it.
Yeah.
And he can't even fucking get up out of the chair because he's either too drunk or too scared.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And then, but also my note just also says, listen, lady, you can't push him away multiple times and then scream out his name when he walks away.
I know that is how this plays
Make
out.
up your mind.
And now a title card comes up. Hour of the Wolf.
Yeah, my note says that was the longest cold open I've ever seen.
By night, Johann lights a match, talks about his terror of being haunted by his dreams, talks about the hour of the wolf, this time of day when most people die and most people are born, and when nightmares come to them.
And do you know what hour that is?
4 a.m., I believe I read.
4 a.m.
Yeah.
That is not him. That is a sort of a universal thing. There's the Giacometti. Is that a sculpture or painting? It's 4 a.m. Like there's a ton of artists have been like 4 a.m. is when all of these things happen. Now there's no truth to this, but there is a lot of in the art world, there has been a lot of things about 4 a.m. being the witching hour.
Okay. I always,
Which the witching
I
hour
always
is the
heard,
hour of the wolf.
3 a.m. was the witching hour, but yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he tells her a story of a time when his parents punished him by putting him in a dark closet, telling him that a little person lived in that closet who would eat him. And then he
Now, just to be clear, he doesn't mean a little person. He means like a troll
like a little,
or like
little monster.
a dwarf. Yeah, he doesn't mean like.
And then
But Lynch meant a little person.
and while he's in there, he lost his goddamn mind, just tearing the place apart, trying to fend off this imaginary monster. And when they let him out, he begs for their forgiveness, and his father lets him decide how many times he'll be hit with a cane. It all sounds a little autobiographical.
It is. The whole thing is a true story.
Oh, what a horrible fucking story.
Yeah, no wonder he's so fucking crazy. He's just like, well, they put me in a closet until I said, you know what sounds better than this? Corporal punishment.
Later, he recounts a story about a time he came home to her saying that that he'd been bitten by a snake, admitting that it was no snake.
Okay, I
having
got a
seen
lot.
Having seen how this next part rolls out, I don't know how anybody believed that this was a snake bite.
Yeah, Alma, come on. Come on. You gotta know.
We cut to a rocky cliff by the sea. Little boy watches Johann fish, and the kid goes through his art stuff and then goes to sun himself on the rocks.
So the kid, I think this is probably the defining moment of the movie. It's also one of the more affecting moments of the movie.
Yeah.
But the kid reminds me very much of Gollum
From The Hobbit?
Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Yeah, because he doesn't say anything ever. He's just this weird little Swedish boy in his
little shorts and sneakers.
Yeah, I was trying to think of the turtle, the friend to all the children. God damn it, I blew the joke. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Gamera's
The
a friend to all
joke
children.
is-
Yes.
I ruined everything. So podcast over. I ruined the whole thing. No, but he just sort of like, he kind of just clambers around the rocks that they're on. And there's no indication that they know each other.
No.
They're just sort of in proximity to one another.
Right.
Close proximity. And then the boy is kind of going through his things and he keeps looking at him as though he's waiting for a reaction. And Johann never gives him a reaction. This is the strangest moment of the movie, but it's very telling, I think.
Yeah. So as
Go on.
Johann gets ready to leave, he looks inside his boots and then he becomes very angry with the kid for, I don't know, reasons we're never going to really.
Well, he tried to steal his precious.
Right.
There can be only one.
Yeah.
It's like Highlander.
He attacks the kid on the rocks, and then the kid bites him on the neck in defense, and then attacks Johann, who smashes him on the rocks until he relents. Then he bites him again on the leg, and Johann bludgeons him to death with a rock and throws him into the sea, where he slowly disappears under the water. And then he resurfaces, which is highly symbolic.
Yeah. So what this is the one part that he did kind of maybe he felt a little compelled to explain why you're killing a child in a movie. Personally, I think they should all be killed in movies, but that's just me. So the way that he described this was sort of him fighting his inner demon.
Okay.
And I think that's one way to look at it, sure. But I also think that they're obviously children, whenever they appear in anything, they are a symbol of vulnerability and innocence. And one of the ways I think you can interpret this is Johann trying to kind of kill this part of him. This sort of childlike part of him, because if we are looking at this through the lens of masculinity, he is killing this innocent part of him in order to become more masculine. And this scene is kind of brutal. Like for 1968, he beats the kid to death with a fucking rock and then tosses him in the water.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. He very gingerly places him into what I imagine is the hands of an adult below the rocks, but because he doesn't just chuck him in the water. It's very like lowers him down.
Yeah. The images of the kid like sinking is spooky as hell because he just sinks and like disappears from view. But then like, you know, obviously as if to say like, this stuff still comes up. You can't fucking hide this. You can't kill it. You can't just push it down. It comes back. You know, you gotta fucking deal with it or it's going to get on everybody, you know?
Well, he also, the kid, before they get into this sort of brawl that he beats him to death, the kid is literally sitting right behind him, and he cannot seem to. It's that feeling of like he can't confront him and be like, "What the fuck do you want?" Like he's like inches from his back, and there's Johann just with his fucking friend, and he's like kind of winding up, and he starts slowly winding up his fishing rod, and then he starts like winding it faster and faster and faster. He's trying to run away from this child rather than turn around and be like, "What, dude?"
Right.
But he doesn't. He just winds up and he's trying to run away, and the kid won't let him. But he's also not really doing anything menacing. He's just there in a way that this man is trying to get away from. And look, I am a person who is constantly trying to get away from everybody. Whether you are a child or an adult, it does not matter.
Yeah.
I'm just
people talk about Carnival of Souls, you know, that kind of low budget.
This reminds me a lot of Carnival of Souls.
Awesome. And I think like that is a good example. And this is a good example of how you can't let budget be a constraint on a movie, because like there's legitimate terror and creepiness in this scene. It's just water. Like, I mean, like, but he, like, I don't know, he's able to create that feeling. And I think the silence speaks to whatever that kid is supposed to represent, whether it's his unresolved childhood trauma or whether it's the innocence that he wants to try to shake so he feels like he can grow up. Whatever it is, like, I don't know. Yeah. I just think that this, like, damn it, I lost my train of thought. But I think that this scene is there specifically to show how desperate he is to resolve it. Like whatever that kid's supposed to represent, I think it's there to show how desperate it is and how much it's impacting him in case it's not obvious.
Yeah.
I think that's why, to me, well, first of all, I love the reference to Carnival of Souls, because to me, there are two things this movie really reminds me of: The Haunting and Carnival of Souls, because I think of the way that I view the other people in the mansion or the castle. They're very ghoulish in that way that the people are sort of stalking her in Carnival of Souls. Yeah. They're just this kind of ominous threat that's just on the margins a little bit. But this scene feels very pivotal, because this is you're building so much tension, and you know that something is going to happen in this moment. You don't know what it is, but you know it's going to be bad. And all it is a child sitting behind a man or going through his things. Like, you know that this is going to result in something terrible. And it's all just this one shot of just these two people on a rock. And then the way that the whole scene kind of unfolds, I think we get a little overexposure in the film, and the colors look a little blown out. But it's, I don't know if they slow it down or whatever, but it feels very stilted in the way that it kind of unfolds. Everything about the scene feels unnatural.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like that again. I think you're right. That's what, that's what real film, like a very talented filmmaker doesn't need CGI or a giant budget. And I'm not slighting any of that. It's just like, but you don't need to do that. He's giving you everything you need to know about this character right here in this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really brilliant and how desperate he is to get away from this kid, that he is an adult man who's just like furiously winding up his fucking fishing rod to get away. And he's just a child who's just sitting behind you. I mean, granted, he's being a little bit of a weirdo, but also I think what we really need to address here is Alma, in no world does a snake bite resemble a child's bite.
No.
Unless that snake has a full set of human teeth.
Right. So now Alma is understandably horrified at this admission, and they're interrupted by the school counselor again. They're sure that the door is locked, but he lets himself in to tell them about an oncoming storm. And then
dude just walks in, just pops up in their conversation.
Yep. And then he invites them to another party where Veronica will be in attendance. And then
he actually does a lot more than that. This is, I think, another very important scene that speaks to the masculinity part of it. Because this dude, I believe this is the homo, shows up. Thankfully, no one's getting slapped this time around. But he comes in and interrupts this conversation that they're having, like a gay does. And he gives him a gun. And so the implication of him giving him a gun is that Johann can't protect himself. And he refers to it as something he can use to protect himself against even the small game on the island, is what he says.
Yeah. Which
also, coming right off of that scene with the child, feels a little bit like an eerie comment.
Yeah.
Because we never know whether that moment is supposed to be real or not. Probably not, but he gives him this like pistol, and he's just like, "Here you go," because you're not enough of a man to protect yourself or your lady. We didn't address this. Liv Ullman is actually pregnant during the most of this movie.
Yeah,
and they don't do anything to hide that. And in fact, because she actually gives birth during the production of this movie, and then throughout like the last several weeks of shooting or whatever, she has like a pillow stuffed under her cable knit sweater or whatever. But it is inconsequential to the movie.
Right.
And
right.
But
She mentions it at the beginning, just almost as if to just sort of like explain like why, when you see her fully standing up, why she's obviously pregnant.
It's very odd to be like, you have thought through this in terms of your production, but it's not part of your story.
Yeah.
That's an interesting interpretation of the kid, then, if that's supposed to be like some subtext of him just not wanting a child.
Ooh,
but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Could be.
Yeah.
Should have killed that kid.
Well, that's what you call small game.
Oh. So yeah, he leaves him with a gun. And then Alma demands that he tell her about Veronica, and then throws the diary on the table in front of him. He tries to play it off like it was no big deal, but she's not buying it.
Look, I don't think any of this is Alma's fault. If some gay barges into my house and says some shady, cunty shit to me and then puts a gun on the table, I would be like, look, we're leaving this island right now. Everything is not okay.
She reads his words, which describe a very one-sided relationship. He was obsessed with Veronica, but she didn't seem to feel the same. So they snuck around, and it turns out that there was a huge scandal surrounding their relationship because she was already married at the time.
And it's implied that she's married to someone very important or famous or wealthy or whatever.
So now,
but this is a part. First of all, girl, you don't let on that you're reading his diary. You're not supposed to know that.
Yeah,
Jesus. But also, there is a moment here where she's kind of running through her monologue, and he's got the gun. He sort of has it in his hand, and they're just holding on her face. And it is probably the most painful shot of this entire movie.
This whole scene is very, very painful because it's not just that. She compares their relationship to this like desperate obsession with Veronica, and is like, why are you not like that with me?
Right.
And then he turns the fucking gun on her.
And it's weird because she will come back to this a little bit later, but you get the feeling that again, she's sort of stepping up to be like, we can resolve this, or we can work this out, but he's just sort of like, no, barf, here's all of my garbage. And she's like, let me try to help you through this. And instead, what does he do?
Well, he shoots her 3 times.
Yep, he sure does.
So now he runs off. He leaves and he runs off to the castle.
Now, what I here's my thoughts on this. And maybe it's a reach, maybe it's not. I don't know. It seems like if we think about the child being part of him and we think about Alma being a part of him, he is essentially in these moments killing off the last good parts of him, leaving him only with these monstrous people.
Yeah. This I'll save it till the end. I have an interpretation that basically falls along those lines. So now he first encounters the Baroness in the castle, who tells them that there is no party, and then she undresses for him, trying to seduce him. And then he
just eating chicken topless. That's where she's at. Where she's at that night.
There's a specific OnlyFans section for that kind of stuff.
Look, I don't even know if it's that specific. I bet it's
naked
probably,
mukbang. And then he
I don't know what you just said. It sounds fucking disgusting.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same way.
Yeah, way to go. You just traumatized 2 people.
It's my gift to you.
It reminds me of this moment reminded me of The Sentinel.
Yeah.
Okay. Just like this really like, hey, welcome to my house. Here's my girlfriend. She's going to masturbate while I go get some cake for you.
Black and white cat. Black and white cake.
Black and white cake.
And then he hungrily kisses her feet, and she tells him where to find Veronica in the castle.
I didn't like it. I didn't like this moment at all.
Nope. Then he encounters the Baron, who tells Johann that he and Veronica are a thing, and that she's told him everything about them. And he is terribly jealous of what they had and will be a part of whatever it is that Johann and Veronica do tonight.
Are we supposed to understand this man to be the husband of Veronica? Or to be a manifestation of that feeling?
I think that this, I don't know, I think that this is sort of going back to that sort of abstraction of humiliation.
Yeah, it does feel a lot like they're throwing things in his face at this point. Because from here on out, we are just fucking full-on horror movie.
In another room, he witnesses the Baron walking up the wall and onto the ceiling, which is a fucking awesome shot. I love it so much.
It's like, you know, we think about like how cool the Tina being tossed around the room in Nightmare looks. Like that's a great scene. And what did they do? They had to create an entire room that could move, you know, and 360. All this is a trick of the camera. He's just at a particular angle that makes it look like he's walking on the ceiling. And it is so deeply unnerving to see this happen because he just walks across the room, up the wall and onto the ceiling. For no particular reason.
It is like when I'm so spooked by this is because like this is the sort of shit that happens in my dreams, and when I wake up and I think about them, it's not anything like scary.
It's not
just
right.
So fucking, it's so weird, and it's not right, and but it's presented in a way that is meant to be perceived as just ordinary, and I cannot fucking square the two things, and it scares the shit out of me.
Well, we've talked about that when we talked about haunted house movies, and why we both love haunted house movies so much, because the terror in a haunting film is not a serial killer. It's not like some monster. It's the feeling that something is not correct. And then that feeling just gets deeper and deeper. And that is essentially what happens as this man starts to kind of walk up the wall. And he's also covering his face in a way that is very upsetting.
Right. And it's, oh God. Yeah. Cause he's like looking through his fingers, and you only see his that one eye, and he almost seems like embarrassed or like he's embarrassed that he's been seen doing
That's
this
what
thing.
it is. It's that vulnerability and that shame. He's covering his face as though a child might cover their face, looking through his fingers to see how you're reacting to him.
Yeah.
What's the term for animation that's close to reality but far enough that it becomes creepy?
Uncanny Valley?
Uncanny Valley. That's kind of what this feels like almost.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're watching this thing that's like you've been in a room like that before, and you've seen someone like that before, but then he's like, it's just doing something that humans don't do, and it's like, wait, so this is off.
Yeah. That's precisely what
and
it is.
It also has that dreamlike quality of being like, this is a physical manifestation of an emotion. This is shame, manifest in this man.
No, yeah, that's very closely tied into what I'm about to say in my theory, but I totally agree.
Yeah. In another room, the Baroness waits by a harpsichord with an old woman in a hat. And she tells him that Veronica is just on the other side of the door. And then the old woman removes her hat and then pulls her face off like a mask.
I hate myself for saying this. I feel like this scene is a little bit beneath him.
Really?
Only in the moment when she takes her eyes out and puts them in the glass. If she hadn't put her eyes in the glass, I think the scene would have been great. But he takes it a little bit too far, and it feels
it's like it goes a little too far. Yeah. So then Johann retreats to the shadows in fear.
This is also my note here, is that this feels like a David Lynch movie.
Totally.
For sure, yeah. In another room, the Baron sits Johann down in a chair and applies makeup to Johann and hits him with some perfume and a robe.
Now, so again, we come back to that idea of fears of homosexuality, but also fears of masculinity, because what this guy is doing is he's feminizing it. Mm-hmm. He's talking about it in a very different way. He's like, I'm just going to put a little line under your eyeliner. He's putting makeup on him, but he's describing it in a way that doesn't seem directly like he's putting makeup on him. He's like, oh, we're just going to prepare you in a way.
His description, he's like, hey, you're a little pallid. You're a little pale right now. Your lips are blue. Let me help you with that.
Now, here's what I'm going to say. Maybe it's a hot take. Maybe it's not. Max von Sydow never looked better. Dude looks great. He's got on this like very chic robe. It's just a little bit of makeup. It looks fantastic.
Yep.
Also, the Bergman, terrifying.
Yeah, he leads him down a hallway filled with pigeons, and Johann turns before entering Veronica's room, and the Baron appears to have wings like the Birdman.
What I love about this is that that's just a room full of pigeons.
Oh, it smells crazy in there.
So gross in there. Like he's literally swatting birds out of his way.
Yeah. He enters Veronica's room, which is empty except for a body on a table under a white sheet.
And I thought he was going to be a corpse fucker. And I thought, you know what? Too much necrophilia on this podcast for my liking. We went through very early on this show. We went through a really long and very uncomfortable run of what's the word I'm looking for?
Incest.
Yes,
movies with incest.
And now we're just like, why do we keep coming back to corpse fucking? I'm not cool with either of these things.
Yeah. He tries to wake her, caresses her skin. She begins to laugh and then sits up suddenly, kissing him like a crazy person. And then he climbs onto the table with her and hears the people from the castle laughing. And she tries to distract him, but he looks, and the castle inhabitants are sitting there watching the two of them. But they're like arranged in the shot.
It is a tableau that is unsettling in so many ways.
Some of them are like perched in the window and like braced against the ceiling and shit. It's
the guy in the window we don't actually get an explanation for who he is. He's the musician. He's basically the one. I think this comes back to Bergman's desire to be a great musician, but having absolutely no talent or skill there, because he's the musician and he's in the window, but like crammed in it, like squished into it. His whole body is pushed against the side in a way that I find very unsettling. They're all arranged in this bizarre tableau that is so great and so creepy.
Yep. With his makeup smeared, looking battered, he prostrates himself before his visions and thanks them for pushing him over the line.
What he says here is, I thank you for finally crossing the line. The mirror has been shattered, but what do the shards reflect?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yep. So we cut away again to a vision of the dead boy in the sea, like surfacing.
Well, he also keeps talking, but the sound cuts out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's as though like he finishes that line, and that's the last thing we hear. His mouth keeps moving, but we hear no sound. And it's almost as though like that's the part that matters.
Right. We cut back to the present. Alma explains how she survived the gunshot wounds and then she hid. Moments after he left, Johann returned looking completely insane, pacing in the cottage. He writes in his diary for several hours and then ran off to the forest with it, and she follows him.
I'm not sure how I feel about this from here. Part of me wants the movie,
this sort of epilogue.
Yeah, part of me wants the movie to just end on that moment of him sort of silently talking and leave it there. And I feel like
because I don't honestly, I'm not sure what value this adds to the story.
Well, so there were two things about this movie. The first was he had actually originally shot a bunch of shit at the beginning that's supposed to go along with the soundtrack you hear of everybody kind of shuffling around getting ready for the shot. And then there's this, and something tells me this might be a studio note where they were like, you got to kind of resolve it a little bit. You can't let the obviously pregnant woman get murdered.
Right.
I'll defend it. I don't love it, but I think I have an idea what he was trying to do, but we can.
I don't dislike it, but I feel like it would have been a lot more punchier if he just was like the end.
Yeah. Fun.
Yeah.
So she finds him in a bad state and comforts him, but then he transforms into the Baron. And she sees Johann in the distance being attacked by the demons of his visions. The Birdman bites him. The old hat woman beats his neck with a clutch of rose thorns. Oof. And these are all like this shit really stuck with me because it's all super high contrast shots.
Yeah, it is.
They're all lit from above. They all look fucking hideous. And they're just people with it's not like they're monstrous or anything like that. They're just people with like pancake makeup on to accentuate the light on the shot.
And they look very ghoulish, like the ghouls in Carnival of the Souls. Like this doesn't take CGI. It doesn't take anything. You just make them look a little bit dead, and all of a sudden I fill in everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they all seem to vanish, leaving Alma alone in the woods. Back in the cottage, she finishes up asking us, the viewers, the question she asked Johann earlier about a couple living together for so long. Does the woman become like the man? Does she know his thoughts in such a way that she was able to see his demons in the forest, or were they real? She wonders if she didn't love him enough, or was he too haunted by the man-eaters to love her back? It's a terribly sad question asked by the people who are often caught up in another person's self-destructive shit. Fade to black.
Ask everyone who worked on Jodorowsky's Dune how they feel.
Right.
It's the worst. Like I appreciate the ending a little bit, but it's so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That she's basically like, did I not love him enough to save him? And it's like, no, girl, you were doing fine. You were doing everything.
But she, again, if we kind of go back to where I was going, where she is a character who represents
before you do that, let's get into this. First of all, Thank you everybody for indulging me in talking about this movie and watching this movie. I jammed it in here knowing that it's not a horror movie, but I wanted to talk about this with people. Anyway, usually we finish the movie and I say, does this movie hold up? Of course this fucking movie holds up. But
this is a fucking 5-star movie all the way. It's so fucking good. It is timeless. It is evergreen. Yeah.
So you were already talking, so I will say, hit me with your interpretation.
This movie to me is this is a document of his death drive. Like, this is him just coming apart and analyzing it. The character of Johann is obviously that part of him that is just, that can't seem to sort of just exist like a normal fucking innocent man in the.
You say he's just normal man?
Just a normal man. He's just an innocent man. But he can't seem to just get his shit together. And Alma is not so much a person who just couldn't love him the right way or anything like that. She is a sort of representation of the guilt that he feels for the fucking destruction that he leaves in his wake as he came apart. You know, she is the human cost of him, like, being this fucking artist who just can't express himself in a way that is, in a way that I think that he wants to. Like, I think he's doing it, but he doesn't feel like he's doing it. You know what I'm saying? And, like, at the same time as he's trying to sort of, like, be an artist in the world, do this professionally, he's just acting like a fucking maniac at the same time. And all the people that get hurt as a result of him not being able to get his shit together are represented by this one woman. And in this particular case, it's the woman that he fucking left for Liv Ullman. And he obviously feels terrible about that. But as we've sort of, like, looked at his life going past this, he just kind of keeps doing it.
And the one thing maybe that he needed to hear and that she never was able to say was, get your shit together.
Yeah.
Get your head out of your ass.
Yeah,
She
because there were
spends so much
probably
time.
times where his wife at the time, the one that he ends up leaving, is probably had that moment where she was like, why don't we have this relationship that you seem to have with Liv Ullman? You know, like, and that probably lived with him for a while, you know?
Okay.
Part of his torment.
Yeah.
Chris, you're up.
Not the end result is going to be somewhat similar to what you said, Brian. But for me, the focus of this is those 5 paintings in the beginning. And I think for me, this movie is about how the things that he creates destroy him. And like, you know, like there's, it's Tarkovsky talks about this and Andrei Rublev, like it's the classic kind of like tortured artist thing, right? Like the artist is going to say, I wish I could be anything other than an artist because it's horrible. And like, I wish I could just go put on a suit and like, just go get a job and like have a steady income and like have a kid, but I just can't because it's just not me and I hate it. And like, I have to create. It's like overflows out of me, right? Like that's kind of and it's like the same thing that creates the beauty that the world sees is destroying him. And so that's my, he's a dramatic guy, right? Like he's the emo final boss. So like he's, but it's a, sorry to be overly simplistic, but that to me, that's the kind of the crux of it when I watch it.
I'm going to go wide and I'm going to say yes to both of those things. I think the way that I see this is he is a man who is uncomfortable with success in a way that he's, you know, he sees that people want his, whatever it is he makes, but he doesn't seem to understand why.
Or maybe he doesn't feel like he deserves it.
Yeah.
A lot of it is that. And I think a lot of it is him thinking, I'm making this for this reason. And you don't seem to understand that I'm making it for this reason. Mm-hmm. I think there is a lot. So as I read a lot of the various interpretations of this movie, and some of them I don't agree with at all. Some of them I do agree with. I think there's a lot to be said for masculinity in this. I think there's a lot of this feeling that he is, I think, Chris, what you're saying is right. Here is me being this artist. I just don't have it in me to go and do this. And yet at the same time, he recognizes that is a very, I'm just going to say bullshit position where it's like, your wife doesn't want to go work in a store either, but she does it because someone has to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think in that way, he does see this as like, I can only create art. And it makes me think of our old friend Dan, who is a musician and an artist and always has been. But Dan was a guy who, to my knowledge, has never had a job in his life. He's probably in his mid 40s now, late 40s now, maybe 50. He worked as a dishwasher when he was 16 years old, and he always had women who took care of him in a way. And his position was always like, well, I'm just an artist. And it's like, well, yeah, man, I'm a writer. I was middle-aged before someone started paying me to be a writer. Before that, I was a bunch of other things, but I was still a writer. And it's this idea that like, he is so fragile. And I feel like in a lot of ways, that's why we find ourselves where we are now, because it's like, well, men are only this thing. They can only be this much. And then they can't go and do other stuff because they're just men. You got to let them just be normal men.
Just innocent men.
I'm like, yeah, no, you don't. If you're not a straight white man, everyone, like, you're just like, hey, why don't you fuck off? Shut up. And I feel like that's a little bit what this movie is his recognition of the fact that like, I'm not strong enough to be what she is, this person who constantly steps up. And what does that say about my masculinity? That I can't do any of these things. And yet I also see that he is trying to pursue this idea of masculinity, that is whatever it was in 1968 in Sweden. I have no fucking clue, but I imagine it's not that dissimilar from what it was everywhere else. He kills this child, and this child is like a good part of you. He tries to kill his wife. We think he kills his wife, It's like, these are the last good parts of you before you run off to these monsters and sort of give in. And these monsters are also just there to humiliate you because you don't know what else to do. You want someone to help and understand you, but they just don't seem to. It just seems like a man who is a little bit muddled in his thinking, but he's desperately trying to find someone to help him. I have sympathy and I don't.
I think he would say the same thing about himself, right?
Yeah. And again, that's what I said up top. It's like, I have a lot of problems with that. It's like, you recognize it. You just don't want to fucking fix it.
Yeah.
You want someone else to fix it for you. You want a woman to fix it for you, or you want your audience to fix it for you. You don't want to have to sit down and say, how can I do this? Because you've already decided you can't. And I think all of us can recognize that in ourselves, but most of us eventually are just like, God damn it, no one's going to do it for me. I guess I got to do it myself.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I don't want to drag this on too long, but I have a 7-year-old son, and he's about to be 8. And I feel a lot of pressure as a dad to not have him. I don't care about this idea of masculinity in the sense of I don't care how that's defined, but to be somebody who owns his shit, because I do think there's a lot of men that don't, like, they get babied by their parents and they become adults that don't have to own their shit. And like, that would really crush me if he became an adult like that. It's interesting that the conversation you kind of focused on that way. That happens to be a very like personal thing for me, because I had to, like, I was fairly babied, and like I had to figure out how to like handle my business. And it was hard. It was a tough journey as an adult. Like, I hated it. And now I'm like kind of on the other side of it, but like, I think I am, but it's been like a journey for me. And so that's like an important thing that I'm trying to, if he can be anything in the world, I want him to at least be somebody who's responsible and like takes care of himself and takes care of others, as opposed to just like demanding that everything happens, for his benefit.
Yeah.
And I think that is a lot of what he sees in this movie, is that I'm not able, like, that's what the gun thing is about, the guy who shows up. And I think it's interesting that it is the gay character who shows up with the gun. And I think that maybe in postmodern analysis, maybe too much has been made out of the sexuality part of it, because I think there's a conflation of homosexuality and femininity that feels very sort of temporally specific in this case.
I was going to say, I saw a lot of that stuff as well in that, but it also, that aspect of analysis feels a little old.
Yeah, it's a little dated, but I do think it's there in that, like, he conflates the homosexuality with emasculation, which is like, that's just whatever. It is what it is. It's a thing of the time. But like, it's really more about his inability to be the thing that he thinks he's supposed to be. But he does recognize, like, he reminds me of Cronenberg in that way. Like, when we watched
when we did The Brood.
The Brood, it's very much like Cronenberg is right there. He's right on the edge. It's like, you almost get it.
Almost got it figured out, dude. But just think about it a little bit more.
And he can't. Like, he's still just like, I know I should be better, but my wife's a bitch.
Yeah.
It's like he kind of like falls back on that. And this feels a little bit like that. Like, I know I should be this, but gee, I can't.
Look at those tits.
Yeah. And also, and then, And so, like, it's, I don't know. I can see why critics too were like, this is not Bergman's best. I think this is Bergman at maybe his more extreme end of his abstract presentation. It's definitely not his best. I mean, I think Persona and Seventh Seal are his best, but this is, I think, this is the most personal he's going to get. The most obviously personal that he's going to get. And I think that he comes across as a man who's like, I want to be better. I just don't know how. And in that not knowing how, he becomes frustrated and he becomes a little resentful. And that is what this movie is. This is a manifestation of all of those feelings. And he wants someone to be like, hey, let me help you piece it out. And it's like, no, brother, you got to do that on your own.
Yeah. So. Great job. Great pick.
Yep. I'm I'm gonna fucking keep sneaking classy shit into this. I think
these fucking curveballs.
By the time this one's come out, we've already talked about Picnic at Hanging Rock. I really threw us for a loop here in April. Talking about horror movies.
It's a real classy month with some stretching the definition of horror.
Look, I didn't make you watch a Buñuel movie, so
invite me on if you do.
I can't.
You're hitting all my favorites.
Definitely will. Chris, I want to thank you for joining us. This it's been great having your perspective on this, particularly somebody who knows as much about Bergman as you do. What do you got going on? What do you got to plug?
Well, first of all, thank you. I have been a fan of your show for a long time, so it's really kind of fun to be. I'm having a meta moment here. I think y'all do a fantastic job of exactly what you just did here. Like, you give the context, you break down the film, but you're also kind of funny and entertaining. So I think you're a good podcast, and I hope people find you and you're wildly successful at it.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, I struggle with it, honestly, because I don't think I'm a good host. I appreciate y'all saying that, but like, I have no training in like media or communication or like, I just.
Oh, dude, neither do we. We just get up here and we say swears and do Simpsons references, and it just happened to talk about movies.
God damn it! I write true crime for a living. God's sake!
That's cool though. But I recognize where I think I have strengths and weaknesses, and I'm really trying to make Punk Vacation a community thing. Celeste Macabre is on there talking about the adult titles because it's not that I don't watch porn, but I just don't have a particular interest in like vintage hardcore.
I'm going to tell you right now.
I'm going to tell you, there's somebody on this podcast who definitely does.
I really appreciate the fact that you are starting to get into that. I am a trained historian, and I, for many recent years, have turned my eye towards pornography, and it is a very, very complicated topic, and it is something that most people shy away from. They either dismiss it or they shy away from it because it's just too difficult. I think that you are starting to look at it, and in context, it's Vinegar Syndrome is doing, I think, a service for everybody, saying here are things that you should reconsider in terms of cinema. Like, this is a genre, and you are one of the very, very few people that I know of that is willing to look at that in the same context that they would look at, Buñuel or Bergman. And I appreciate that. I think that is, you're doing something very interesting. And I think people should really check into that, and I think that it's, I hope that people will come away with a new perspective.
Thank you. Yeah. Big shout out to the Rialto Report too, who's just
exactly. They're probably the only other one I can think of off the top of my head.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So cool. But I'm trying to bring on as many guests as I can. Like, I'm really excited about the one that just dropped. So we're recording this in early April, and I don't know exactly when it's going to drop. But there's a conversation that's live right now today with Curtis Spieler, and I love when he comes on because he restores most of the stuff. Like, he touches everything, and so he's got a different perspective. He also loves movies, but he's he really wants to talk about how hard it was to restore a Fulci movie because they just put out their first Fulci film.
Mm-hmm.
And like he said, the elements for a lot of Fulci films suck. Like, people don't know that, but like anybody who's ever put out a Fulci film, like, it's a labor of love. And so anyway, I don't know, like, I like hearing about that kind of stuff. And so I'm trying to make Punk Vacation less and less about Chris and more about like this super passionate fan base. And so that's the podcast I'm probably putting most of my like attention to, and trying to figure out how to represent, forget about the company, but more like celebrating these kinds of movies and putting and elevating the discussion around like these kinds of movies, because like Looking for Mr. Goodbar is fucking nuts.
I loved that one so much. I think that's the last really, really good release they put out.
Yeah, so good. And anyways, so well, the Wild Side, the Mondo Macabro one is just fun. Like, we do it once a month ish. We have a similar release schedule to Mondo Macabro in the sense of like, they don't put out a lot.
Look, if you ever want to talk about Perversion Story, count me in.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay, cool. And then They Live by Film is just like I don't know. We just bullshit, and we're just about to get into the Mission Impossible series, and I'm not really looking forward to it, but I might be won over. And so anyways, I thank y'all again for this. This is really fun. And genuinely, like, anytime you want to talk about somebody who loves genre film and art house stuff. Like I'm even fine with the last minute ad because it's just I love the merger of the two. I think there's actually very little separation between the two a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we find it. I mean, that's something that we keep kind of tripping over when we pick movies. Is there is a tremendous amount of crossover between the two, mostly because I feel like both parties, whenever they make the movies in either sort of art house or sort of trashy grindhouse and horror, they're working under the same sort of conditions.
Yeah,
and so the end product bears a lot in common.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So yeah.
Awesome.
All right. What with this out of the way, what's coming up next?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked because as you mentioned, the 99-cent rental will be back next week, and we will be lowering the bar very, very much, and I mean really lowering it with Highlander. As
Here we are, born to be kings.
As you know, this is a singing podcast, and there can be only one, so. That's going to be that. And then in 2 weeks, we're going to get back into our wheelhouse of sorts. Well, actually not our wheelhouse. We're coming back in 2 weeks. Bring me the axe. Maybe we have a guest. I don't know. I'm going to call her up and ask. Forgot to ask. Forgot to check on that, but it's fine. Whatever. We're going to be talking Robert Rodriguez's Body Snatchers reimagining, The Faculty.
All right. That'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I like going to the 90s. We never go too deep into the 90s on this.
Well, that's because there's 6 good movies from the 90s. So come at me, the internet.
All right. So be back here next week as we chop everybody's heads off and in Highlander, and we'll be back in 2 with The Faculty.